Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome. I thought I would just share this with Savannah Guthrie real quick. We showed this last night. Welcome to Ted Investigates. This is just really big. I wanted to show. It's just sad because I wanted to point out a few things in her conference interview.
Okay. And she said, no. She said, Mom's missing. And I said, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Right back.
She said, she's gone. And she was in a panic. I was in a panic. I'm like, call 911.
Yeah.
She's like, I did. We've called them. They're here. And we thought that she must have had like some kind of medical episode in the night, and that somehow, the paramedics had come because the back doors were propped open, and that didn't make any sense. We thought maybe they came and there was a stretcher and they took her out the back. But her phone was there and her purse was there and all her things. And it just didn't make any sense.
Savannah jumping on a plane, heading straight for Tucson to help find her mom.
We were on the phone with the sheriff and trying to, really make clear from the very early moments, Annie and Tommy were saying this isn't that case that you are used to where someone wanders off. She can't wander off. My mom, she was in tremendous pain. Her back was very bad. She was trying to, on a good day, she could walk down to the mailbox and get the mail, but most days not. So there was no wander off. And the doors were propped open.
Yeah.
And there was blood on the front doorstep.
So if I may, the part that is really interesting is like when you're propping open the doors, right? They're propped open. Okay. That's the part I just can't get over. Like, it's one thing to like break open the doors and then they're shut, but they have the doors like propped open because we know there was 3 back doors. I feel like that is extremely strange. That is something of a professional job, not by saying like professional hit like a cartel or something, but like to prop the back doors open and to keep them propped is just, very strange. And they're grabbing her without her. Savannah Guthrie is going to talk about grabbing her without her slippers on, keeping everything there. She's going to be talking about her brother. I have a lot of stuff to go over, a lot of takeaways from this. So I wanted to really hammer home, and we're going to be going over a lot of other stuff, but I wanted to start this out with just her expression. Now, a lot of people have been saying, Savannah Guthrie may have been kind of like, I don't know, a lot of people say crocodile tears. She's crying so much. It's day 55. You're crying so much. You're in ransom notes. You're always sad. There's only so much crying you can do after 55 days. It's your mother, believe me, it would kill me more than anything. But a lot of people are making comments about it. And it's just, how much do you want her to do at this point where it's just like she's accepted it? Unfortunately, time frame has went by long enough. But here, I'll play it. We'll keep going.
And the Ring camera had been yanked off.
And her brother had a theory.
My siblings are so amazing. My brother, he spent his career in the military and worked in intelligence and is a fighter pilot and is brilliant. And he saw very clearly right away what this was. And even on the phone, when I called him, he knew. And he said, I think she's been kidnapped for ransom. And I said,
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Well, why? What? And then, it sounds so like, how dumb could I be? But I didn't want to believe. I just said, do you think because of me? And he said, I'm sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe. But I knew that.
You did?
I hope not. We still don't know. Honestly, we don't know anything.
No.
We don't know anything. So I don't know
Yeah.
So I went over this a little bit last night, but I want to be talking about some of the things, okay? I don't know if everybody can hear me, okay? But we have law enforcement is re-examining the potential headlights behind Porch Guy. Was there DNA that was overlooked, okay? He believes it's possible that the vehicle lights are moving. Adds credibility to the theory that there was a second perpetrator in the kidnapping. I think there was at least three, which was at least the spotter and two others. A potential crime scene at the construction site. We were talking about that last night because the lights, law enforcement might have had a reason to think the construction site was involved, which is why they're looking at it now. You had the three guys that moved out a month, a few weeks shortly after, which is extremely suspicious. But I'll keep playing, but we got a lot to show today.
That it's because she's my mom and somebody thought, oh, that girl, that lady has money, we can make a quick buck. I mean, that would make sense, but we don't know. But yeah, that's probably, which is too much to bear. To think that I brought this to her bedside, that it's because of me. And I just say, I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to my sister and my brother and my kids and my nephew and Tommy and my brother-in-law. I'm like, so sorry. I'm so sorry. If it is me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Savannah describing the reality she and her siblings are living in.
It is surreal. How is it possible that we are having to make a video speaking to a kidnapper who took an 84-year-old woman in the dead of night in her pajamas with no shoes, without her medicine, this little person, and to beg for mercy.
Then came the demands. Multiple ransom notes sent directly to the media.
Did you believe those to be real?
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came. And I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real. And I didn't see them. But, a person that would send a fake ransom note really has to look deeply at themselves.
Yeah.
To a family in pain. But I believe the two notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
When the Ring camera video surfaced and you could see who that person was, just tell me what you thought when you saw those images of the person who took your mother.
I mean, it's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
It's just totally terrifying. And I can't imagine that is who she saw standing over her bed.
Yeah.
I can't. It's too much.
Yeah.
And I'm glad and grateful to the investigators and the technology companies that were able to find that video. To, I hope, at least with people of good heart and compassion, stop the irresponsible and cruel speculation that had started to swirl.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
I'm glad that people saw
Yeah.
what came to our door.
Sorry, just getting my coffee. I mean, right.
When you talk about the cruel speculation, the whispers, the innuendo that it was somebody in your family, how did you weather that?
You know, it's someone the other day said Matt
unbearable.
Lawler, which I thought was a crazy take.
And it piles pain upon pain. There are no words. There are no words. I don't understand. I'll never understand. And no one took better care of my mom
Early afternoon.
than my sister and brother-in-law. And no one protected my mom more than my brother. And we love her, and she is our shining light. She's our matriarch. She's all we have.
Through it all, Savannah says she relied
Matt Lawler.
on her faith,
Matt Lawler.
following her mother's example.
Early on,
Somebody interviewed me. Somebody, or not interviewed me, Jesus, interviewed me. What am I, crazy? Someone said, someone wrote me, one of my members, one of our, not members, subscriber. I know it's off the wall theory, but I thought the guy was a genius to even think of that. He said, I'm starting to think about another theory that'll blow your mind on the suspect. I believe this person would have been the motivation because of the job and accusation. That person is Matt Lawler. That's right. I said it. Look at his build. And well, I don't know if he was in the ski mask, and he was fired from Savannah's job in 2017, and she announced it. He could have been extremely upset and planned for this a long time, being that as they used to be friends. And I read somewhere weeks ago that she had a gathering at her mom's house with her friends from her show because it was a fun getaway. Now, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, way a stretch, but I just thought, I was like, holy cow, to even hear his name, I was like, my God. But anyways.
Felt that I heard for one of the very few times in my life. I did hear God speak to me. As I said to myself, I can handle anything, God. I can handle anything. I just can't handle not knowing. We can't handle not knowing.
Yeah.
I have to know. And I heard a voice. And it said, you do know where she is. She's with me. She's with me. So
What's
whether
up,
she is
Tasha?
on this earth still, or whether she is in heaven, I know where she is. I know who she's with. But we need to know.
With my FICO,
Thank you
I
for
get
saying
easy
that.
access to credit reporting.
I'm going to be in Tucson next week, so I mean, I know it's next week and it's only Friday, and I'm under. Okay, so I just wanted to really quick share a little bit. Just give me a second. I'm just getting caught up with some of these guys.
Appreciate all your support and for supporting my channel. Today is day 54 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. A ton of new information coming out with this Savannah Guthrie interview that she did.
Thank you. I
Some of the
appreciate
things
that. Thank you.
I was expecting her to say. Other things just kind of
Mr.
blew my
Brian
mind. I mean,
Enton
there's some
Ticker,
details
just
that came
so
out that she revealed that I
it's
wasn't
Brian
expecting
Enton
and I didn't
channel.
know
We're going to
about.
break
And I'm going
this
to go
down.
through all of the new developments and everything that stood out to me that she said and what I think it means coming up in this episode. Also, you're going to hear from Maureen O'Connell. She's my friend. She's a retired FBI agent. She's been on the show a bunch. I know you guys love her. I love Maureen too. She's got some really new, interesting theories when it comes to how Nancy Guthrie was taken out of the house. And also the whole possibility of a Mexico connection. Could the suspects have gone back to Mexico, or the suspect? And I've never really been able to shake the possibility of a Mexico connection. I know early on, remember I went to Mexico looking around, and I know early on the sheriff's office said, there's no reason to believe that Nancy is in Mexico or that this involves anyone in Mexico. But at the same time, we've never been told why not to believe that. And I don't know. I haven't I'm not saying there's a Mexican connection. I just haven't been able to shake it. And there's some new
Thank you.
information on that front that I am going to talk to Maureen about coming up a little later in the episode. But first, I do want to go through the key developments when it comes to Savannah Guthrie and the interview that she did with Hoda.
So Brian Enton does a really, really great job breaking this down, and I think it's really important. So we do have to stop it every couple minutes, just out of respect for Brian Enton's show. I have his ticker down there to subscribe. He is one of the most famous journalists, investigative journalists on the planet. I'm going to be on Tucson, but I wanted to use his show to kind of get caught up to everything because I know I haven't been on early in the morning. So we just want to get caught up by this, and then we have a whole program.
Came out on the Today Show. First of all, I mean, it's gut-wrenching. It is gut-wrenching, and it is one of the reasons that I have felt so invested in this story is because I've thought about her and her family and what they have been going through. And when you saw her in this interview, you realized just the agony. And even though we are now on day 54 for them, the pain is still so raw, and the not knowing is still excruciating. And that came through very clearly in Savannah's interview. So the first part I want to play for you, and then I'll talk about it, is how, and I had wondered about this, because I think one of the reasons we're also invested in the story is because we're all thinking about our own moms, and I'm like so close to my mom, and I'm an only child, and like I'm very, very.
He's an only child. Look how I'm an
I've
only
played
child.
out in my mind
Jesus.
like how I would handle realizing if my
Brian,
mom
we're
was
brothers.
gone and abducted.
I'm moving in.
And so this is the first thing that Savannah talked about is how she found out and what went through her mind.
And my sister called me.
Oh no! Wait.
and
Hold on.
I said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "No." She said, "Mom's missing." And I said, "What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?" She said, "She's gone."
Propped open, and there was a plural there, back doors.
Yeah,
being
back
propped
doors
open.
propped open is crazy.
Now I don't know if that was just the way she was kind of saying it, and maybe it's a back door, but I picked up on that.
Why does anybody know in the chat like why? Until my only sister ruined it. Is that funny, Jenny? But propped open, it's so weird. I don't know why that is just so weird to me that you're propping open the doors. Oops, sorry.
More than one door being propped open, she said. Did the suspect, I mean, remember, we saw the suspect or suspects on the front doorbell camera in the front of the house, but did they enter through the back? Did they take Nancy out through the back? Did they perhaps just enter through the back and then open up the front door and open up that security gate and take Nancy out the front, which would explain why we saw the blood in the front? That seems like a real possibility. We still don't know, but the fact that Savannah is acknowledging that the back doors were propped open is very interesting, and in my mind creates several different scenarios in the way this may have all gone down. Also, the fact, obviously, that her phone and purse were there. These are things that I had heard early on, that it didn't appear to be a burglary. And then the fact that she was barefoot and that she was in her pajamas. Again, it just creates this mental picture of how terrifying this must have been for her when it seems she was dragged out of there. And the way that Savannah described that is just heartbreaking. She also talks about Nancy's condition, and we knew that she is mentally with it, but that she had mobility issues, and we're hearing a little more detail about exactly how bad some of those mobility issues are and how that may play into what happened here.
She was in tremendous pain.
Yeah.
Her back was very bad. She was trying to, on a good day, she could walk down to the mailbox and get the mail, but most days not. So there was no wander off. And the doors were propped open.
Yeah.
And there was blood on the front doorstep. And the Ring camera had been yanked off.
Yeah.
And so we were saying, this is
Do something.
this is not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
This isn't, something is very wrong here.
Yeah. Did you guys talk about what possibly could have happened? Like, what could have happened? What went down? Did you?
I think my brother, my siblings are so amazing. My brother, he spent his career in the military and worked in intelligence and is a fighter pilot and is brilliant. And he saw very clearly right away what this was. And even on the phone, when I called him, he knew.
He knew.
And he said, I think she's been kidnapped for ransom. And I said,
Yeah.
what? Well, why? What? And then, I mean, it sounds so like, how dumb could I be?
So interesting to see that the family very early on thought this was a kidnapping, and it makes sense. I mean, again, you think about if you were in this situation and you knew that your mom could barely walk and that she wouldn't just disappear and the back doors are open and her phone and everything is left behind, it makes sense why she would think that. Savannah also talked about whether or not her fame and wealth could have something to do.
This is absolutely ridiculous that there's very little updates here. When I'm searching X right now, even there's very little updates outside of the Savannah Guthrie interview, and I haven't been on for a few days. This is like ridiculous.
Do with this. And this is something that we have talked about since the beginning, and I've had people on the show to talk about, because if you look historically and statistically at kidnappings and abductions, they are not typically, they are almost never random. And especially when it comes to elderly people. And it has always seemed like if someone was going to kidnap Nancy or abduct Nancy and ask for a ransom, it would probably have something to do with the fact that they knew that Savannah Guthrie was her daughter. And it seems that Savannah also realizes that, and she talked about that.
But I didn't want to believe. I just said, do you think because of me? And he said, I'm sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe.
Yes.
But I knew that.
You did.
I hope not. I mean, we still don't know.
Mhm.
Honestly, we don't know anything.
No.
We don't know anything. So I don't know that it's because she's my mom and somebody thought, oh, that girl, that lady has money, we can make a quick buck. I mean, that would make sense, but we don't know. But yeah, that's probably, which is too much to bear. To think that I brought this to her bedside, that it's because of me. And I just say, I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to my sister and my brother and my kids and my nephew and Tommy and my brother-in-law. I'm like, so sorry. I'm so sorry. If it is me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
So again, just excruciating to think about the guilt that Savannah feels. And obviously, I mean, that I think anyone would feel that way. You know, it's just terrible. I mean, she shouldn't feel that way. But you know, I don't even know what to say about it. It's terrible hearing her cry during that part. To me, that was really the most emotional part.
Yeah, I just think this is absolutely like ridiculous that the two ransom notes here that Brian Ented saying, again, please subscribe to his channel. Obviously, everybody knows Brian Ented. I took off a few days. I want to get caught up with the case. The two ransom notes, you got to release something. You have to give us pictures of the people in the back. You have to give us something. You have to show us the suspects in the back of the yard. There has to be more things that you need to show the public now, unless they think they have the suspect in mind and they don't, right? They have the mixed DNA, the murder weapon, Nancy's body. I mean, if you don't have those three things, it's time to show the public more stuff. This is just replaying. We're just recycling stuff. I mean, Savannah had to come out on NBC News and she's giving us the most information. That's ridiculous by Sheriff Nanos that she is the person that is giving us the most information right now, and it absolutely drives me completely bonkers that this is actually going down. So like when I go out there, hey Gen X, what's up? So I mean, I can't stand showing like restreaming Brian Enton's videos, but I want to get caught up to the court case, and I feel like there is, we need to talk to handymans, constructions, workers at El Charo, oil change, bank tellers, Uber Eats, Uber drivers in the past, every single construction company. I mean, interview the Airbnb people that rented it out. I mean, locals are talking. And did you hear about all the searches now in Mexico on Google Trends about Nancy Guthrie? There's like for the tip line. So if you put in the reward money, there is like now I understand some parts of Mexico might be a little bit of a poorer area, so it might be people just checking it out. But it's ridiculous that they had like over like 2,000 hits all over Mexico about people with reward money. I thought that was very suspicious, which that's a lot of people to search into, but that's still a 1% shot in the dark. But I read that somewhere.
Part of the interview, and just so sad. She also talks about the ransom letters, and this is something that we haven't talked about in a while. I think a lot of us pushed these aside. Remember TMZ, and there were
I don't think she is either.
Different letters, and we didn't know which ones to take seriously, and there was never really a clear way to pay a ransom. And a lot of the experts who I was talking to were saying, look, like they didn't even think any of the letters were real. But what's interesting is Savannah is saying that she thinks that 2 of the letters may have in fact been legit. Because there were 2 letters that went to the local TV station that also went to TMZ. There was information in those letters that made it seem like they could be real, specifics about things inside the house, some specifics about things outside the house. And even all this time later, it sounds like Savannah believes that those letters could have been legitimate. Listen to what she said.
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came. And I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real. And I didn't see them. But, a person that would send a fake ransom note really has to look deeply at themselves.
Yeah. I mean, you are a sick son of a bitch. If you're sending a fake ransom note, it just shows you the type of world we live in. Like that is like the most twisted thing you could possibly do. Like trying to cash in off an abduction that you didn't even do. Like you are mentally screwed in the head. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Fake ransom letter. It's not even you. And I heard that, but I mean, at least give us something here. I mean, the public usually helps solve cases, right? And because it's been 50 plus days now, it's past the point of even where I think the public can help. I mean, it's just like we have nothing to work with. It's silly. It's like we have to go down there and we have to talk to everybody. You have to talk to all the locals. You can't just drive around up and down the street and like search every watershed and mine. Like you have to talk and network with people, and not saying I'm some like private eye detective, but people talk. Okay. You have to give money. You have to like bring money, in the military, like when they bring thousands of dollars in cash, right? And they hand cash to people to talk, and they also have cash in case they get like captured. But I'm saying you have to, like the CIA, like black sites, they bring cash to people. You got to get people to talk, and you juice people.
To a family in pain. But I believe
Oh my God, it's Dee Dee's
the
birthday?
2 notes that we received, that we responded to,
Wait.
I tend to believe.
Holy cow, it's Dee Dee's birthday? How was it your birthday? I didn't know it was your birthday. This is just crazy. I mean, what are we going to do with this case? Did anybody do like a spirit box? I don't even know.
Those are real.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So I still have a lot of questions about the ransom letters. I think in a future episode, I'm going to dive back into the ransom letters and everything we know, because again, I think a lot of us have moved on from those. And the fact that Savannah is saying she thinks 2 of them are legit, probably means that law enforcement is also thinking that and telling her that. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to talk to some of my sources again, and I'll do an episode in the coming days about the ransom letters. Remember, she offered $1 million reward. So why that never panned out? Again, there's this theory, which I've talked about, that this was an abduction for ransom initially, that something happened to Nancy where she died, and that whoever did this is thinking, I don't want to be charged with murder, because you could still be charged with felony murder, and I don't even want the ransom anymore. We're just going to pretend like this never happened. I think that's a possibility.
Disco, he wanted to say happy birthday. Holy cow. Wait, happy birthday, Disco. Sorry, I'm trying to spell. All right, so again, this is Brian Enton channel. Subscribe to Brian Enton. Subscribe to Gen X. Subscribe to Gen X if you want to put your link out here. I caught a little bit of your live last night too, and then I crashed so hard. I think you did. It started at 9. Gen X, if you want to put your link to your channel. I know we don't have many people watching, but still, any little bit might help.
But yeah, I'm going to dive back into the ransom letters, because that was one of the parts of the interview that surprised me, that she still believes that 2 of the ransom letters are legit. That is not something that I was expecting her to say, but it's interesting. And this last part I want to play is about, well, actually there's 2 more parts I want to play, but this next part I want to play is about what her family's going through. I mean, there have been, and I saw it a ton when I was there. I mean, there's been a lot of finger pointing at members of the Guthrie family and people thinking that they were involved, even though the sheriff outright said that they are not suspects. And I've reported about polygraphs being taken, but to hear her explain how this has felt for her,
has anybody heard about polygraphs being taken? Is that the construction site workers the polygraphs been taking? Oh no, why are you done with this? You're done with this? You're done with like the case? Oh, thank you. Yeah, please search. Please, we need all eyes on this. This is Gen X's page. This is excellent. Has anybody heard about polygraphs? Is that the polygraphs for the construction workers? Is that what they were talking about?
Felt was again really heartbreaking. Listen to this.
When you talk about the cruel speculation, the whispers, the innuendo that it was somebody in your family, how did you weather that?
It's unbearable.
Yeah.
And it piles pain upon pain. There are no words.
Gen X, do you have, I have also, yeah, I know. I mean, I'm getting destroyed with views here in the last couple times. I've been on for like 19 views. Do you have, I do have software where I could show you some of the meta. I'm sure you know all the stuff though. Do you know all the like backdoor stuff with all the, like I have software that says the rankings on titles, thumbnails, and also, the meta tags? I mean, I assume you do because you're pretty creative, but I'm saying, do you have like the software stuff? No, but I'm also hearing the polygraph test with the construction workers. I thought I heard that. Well, Gen X, that's why I'm switching. I'm going chasing the tornadoes. LOL.
There are no words. I don't understand. I'll never understand. And no one took better care of my mom than my sister and brother-in-law.
And then one
Okay,
final
I
part of
wasn't
the interview
sure.
I want to play for you before I get into my discussion with Maureen is.
No, I know. You know what, Gen X, though? Like, I know. You'll definitely get more views in time, but, you know, a lot of these views are the people that have to go there. We have to network with. I mean, I'm going to be there, so you can share my channel when I'm on. You know, I mean, again, I'm going to be asking questions and driving in front of Nancy's house. I'm not sure if that's really what you want to show, but when I was doing that, when someone allowed me to share their channel, it worked a little bit better. Yeah, well, please share any feedback or anything you have.
Is about, they asked Savannah what she thinks about the investigation, which this was obviously interesting to me considering all of the criticism of the sheriff, the fact that it's now day 54, there's still no resolution. I wanted to hear what Savannah thought. And well, I'll tell you what I think about it, but listen to what she said.
How did your family feel about the way the investigation was conducted?
Well, it's still going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people have worked tirelessly. And we see that.
Mm-hmm.
But we need answers. We cannot be at peace without knowing. And someone can do the right thing.
So I thought it was interesting that she obviously recognized the tireless work of law enforcement, and it has been tireless. And they still have this task force that's working pretty much around the clock. But you also heard her say, I mean, the agony of it now being almost 2 months, and she's clearly, I sensed there's a frustration there, which how could there not be? How could there not be if you've been waiting this long for some kind of resolution? I think we're all frustrated, let alone if you're Savannah Guthrie or someone in her family. So my heart again goes out to her and the family. You know, I don't know. I think that's one of the reasons that we're all so invested in this. And I just hope for them that there's some kind of resolution soon.
I mean, if you noticed, JLR got it kind of started, but like going out there and just being boots on the ground with the metadata, it's going to suck all the views. And then, you know, if we dual stream when I'm out there and you can talk about what the stuff you know, that could boost it. I know. I mean, it is crazy. Yes, I'm going to Arizona. I'll be there Tuesday. Again, they'll probably, you know, if they find her before Tuesday, I'm going to be SOL, but I'm going to be there Tuesday. I know it's far away. It's still pretty far away. We're only on Friday, but I'm definitely going to go down there and just talk to people, though. I'm not going to like drive up and down a road and like, you know, drive all over Tucson to look under rocks and stuff. I want to network with the locals and talk to the locals. And when I get a really dark tan, Italian and Spanish people, like, look, you know, we're identical. We got like the same language, basically. We blend in, right? When I go to Mexico, no one bothers me for tourism. Italians and Mexicans are like basically the same of a kind. So, you know, I'm not even saying it's a Mexican person. It could be an Italian person for all I know. I don't know. A dark complexion person is what I'm saying. I'm dark complexion. Maybe I'll get people to talk with me.
Any of this make a difference? Her talking, could this actually cause someone to come forward who feels, you know, guilty or sees Savannah's agony and decides they want to do the right thing? I hope so. I'm not sure that's really going to happen, though, and that's one of the things that I talked about with Maureen O'Connell, again, my friend and retired FBI agent. Maureen, it's nice to see you. Thank you for joining me again.
Good to see you as always.
Are you having a good day?
I'm having a long day already, even though it's early.
I mean, the last thing I like to do is sit here and restream and break down a case and pause it every 30 seconds because it's kind of like, it's not my work, right? It's not what I'm doing. I like to be boots on the ground, but like, I would take a break. I like take a day or just like enjoy. I mean, because I'm getting the same thing. I mean, there's 37 people watching, you know what I mean? Obviously, if you're monetized, you know, I'm probably going to make like, you know, I just do this because I kind of got second wind. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I know YouTube can kick your butt.
But
Are you?
it's all good. Yep.
Okay,
Started super early, but getting it done.
well, thank you for making the
Jenny, Criminal Network. I love Criminal Network to death. He offered that I could sleep on his couch. He is so popular now. I am like gone with the wind. I'm joking. I'm definitely going to keep calling him. Like I did talk to him last week. We spoke and he was with Dad's Gone Live, but he's got a lot of views now. Like he's it's a rags to riches story. He quit his job. He is on a roll, man. He's famous now. So I'm definitely going to blow him up when I'm out there. And I definitely want to see him. I mean, I love that guy more than anything, but like he hit the jackpot right now, so he's going to let it ride, so he's a little tougher to get in contact with these days. But I'm so happy. I mean, of course, anybody that blows up is going to be harder to get in contact with, but I couldn't be more happy for the guy.
Time for me. I was just commenting your necklace. I was wondering if it was a like an FBI. It looked like almost a sheriff's star.
It's actually the Chicago Police badge. They have a star. And this was my sister's, and she worked Chicago Police for her whole career. And then when she passed away, her kids were kind enough to give it to me, and I just absolutely cherish it.
Well, it looks really nice. It's
just like I loved my sister Sue. She was a lunatic, but in the best possible way.
awesome. So I wanted to ask you a couple about some of these new developments with Nancy Guthrie. First of all, hey guys, I was in Arizona for almost a month and a half, and my eating habits, they were not great. There was so much good Mexican food, and I found myself eating late at night when I would get done with work. So now that I'm back home for a bit, I am getting back into my Factor routine, and Factor is the sponsor of today's video. Factor doesn't ask you to meal prep because they have done the work for you. What was your takeaway?
That was really hard to watch, even though it was only a few minutes long. And it's a multiple of 5,000, what I've been saying since the beginning, which is I wake up some nights wondering, where is Nancy?
Where's Criminal Network channel? Just type in Criminal Network.
The moment I saw those images of that porch pirate,
1 second.
I just thought, oh my God, what she must have awakened to. It's unbelievable.
Network or something?
And now that we find out that her family says that she did in fact leave her doors unlocked, or at least the back doors. I suspected maybe something with, owning a dog all those years. And I said it to you before on the show that she may have left it open to let the dog out or whatever. But I really,
Yeah, I don't even know how to.
Goes, at the end of this, let's go over some more tips for people that are
here.
living alone and want to remain safe, because I've got a whole new list. I mean, I only gave a couple of things last time you asked me.
Yeah, remind me at the end, because I do want to ask you
Criminal
that, because
Network,
a lot of people commented when we did that video that it was really, really helpful. Even some of the stuff that it's like, oh, everybody must know that. You just forget. So I'm
here. Can you see the criminal? Oh, that's my freaking son. Jesus, I want to show him. Criminal Network. Oh shit, you got it right there. Okay, cool. Okay.
And I'm gonna ask you that at the end. But yeah, when you've worked with like I'm just thinking about Savannah right now. I mean, obviously there's a plan for her to get back to work. But when you've worked with victims, I mean, with the not knowing, I mean, it'd be hard enough to lose your mom and know what happened, but the not knowing, like, how do you get through that?
I worked with a lot of victims.
I know, you just kick the shit out of somebody in Walmart
for cases throughout my career. But the ones that I really worked closely with were the family members of the victims of the Colonial Parkway murders. And even though it was a TV show we were there for weeks and weeks. We spent a great deal of time with the victims' families and just talking about what these crimes did to their parents, how it just destroys whole families. And I don't mean destroys like everyone stops loving each other. I mean, your mother is completely broken. Your dad, when they lose a child, your father, the same way. The marriage is never the same because they can't seem to connect. Because this type of thing is so heavy. It's like having an elephant sit on your back.
Yeah, it never ends.
24/7.
Yeah, this is really there's only a few interviews left. Like there's nothing besides that NBC interview with Savannah. They're not sharing us anything, Handsome Man One. They're not sharing us like jack shit. So that's why I'm going to go out there. I mean, again, I'm not going to I'm going to try to talk to as many people as I can, but like this is just so dried up right now, this case. It's just going around in circles, and Savannah Guthrie has to go online and tell everybody about it. No one else can even say the clues she gave us.
So heavy, and you can feel it when you interact with these people. It's oftentimes the hardest part of the job is just seeing that and then feeling what it does to you.
Disco Criminal Network was started out with I don't know if you guys can even hear me, but Criminal Network started out with Delphi Hardcore and also John Benet Ramsey, and he also has his own blog, which is awesome. It'll break down Delphi, and Jean Benet. Okay, let me shut up.
Too, when you're involved. But for Savannah, I mean, it doesn't take a psychic to see what she's feeling. It's everywhere. I mean, you could feel it through the screen. I wish there was something I could do to help her. So many of us do, and I know you do too, Brian. Oh, and one of them would be to find the sons of bitches that did this to her mother and just, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think about her job too. You know, she has to go through all this in such a public way, and then going back to work, what that's going to be like for her, even just because it is the Today Show and it's kind of a lighthearted show. I mean, they do cooking segments. It's not really meant. It's not a depressing show. You know what I mean? It's a morning show. So I just wonder what that's going to be like for her to have to kind of try to, I guess,
Brian,
put this to the side.
there's a lot of victims that go through this that have to go back working at McDonald's or working at the DMV, where they're dealing with the public all the time and they're just on the verge of tears, sometimes years. Or, you know, my cousin who's a teacher who went through it, and her husband who's a physical therapist who's
Handsome Man One. That's exactly. But before you hopped in here, that's exactly what I was saying. The most we have gotten is the NBC interview. That's all we've gotten. Like, there's nothing else. That is the only thing. That is the only thing we've gotten is the Savannah Guthrie interview, talking about the back doors propped open, talking about how Annie called her first to let her know her mother was taken, talking about her military brother was the, kind of saying, okay, it looks like a ransom. Talking about how they think the 2 ransom notes are real. I know that's the only thing we've gotten. And I've taken a couple days off this.
have gone through the loss of a child or some loved one. It's hard. I mean, when my mom passed very suddenly and I had to go back to work, it was not easy. But my mother wasn't ripped out of her bed in the middle of the night and, God knows what happened to her. At least we knew where she was. We were able to go through the motions of saying goodbye to her and honoring her and celebrating her life. Those rituals are very, very important to moving forward in a healthy way. This not knowing, as you pointed out a minute ago, is just impossible. It's just so hard.
Do you think Savannah speaking out this way now could lead someone to come forward? Do you think it could make a difference?
Well, I would like to think so. And I'm sure there are people out there that know something. But if you're closely associated with these sons of bitches, you have to be pretty cold-hearted yourself, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't.
I'm not quite understand your question, but yeah, we don't know if there's more from the interview. So here, wait, I'm going to read off some things to you, some notes they took from another online sleuth I found. Just give me a sec. Let's just hear her out, and then I'll play some things that law enforcement is looking into now.
Be so jaded. But what in the actual, why have you not come forward already?
Oh, thanks, Tina.
You've got money on the table. So even if you don't have a conscience, you can get $1.2 million. Just make a call. You're never going to have a life-changing opportunity like this again as long as you live. Just do what.
Well, there's no proof of life video. They know she's dead. So I wonder if is that why they offered less than the ransom? I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say they know she's dead, but I'm saying, where the hell's the proof of life video? Any ransom, Al Qaeda, ISIS, anything has a proof of life video, right? I mean, and then they usually, unfortunately, execute the people. But I'm saying, where's the proof of life? Where is at least a video showing they got Nancy? That's because they probably scared the hell out of her in her sleep, and she was on a pacemaker. And unfortunately, I don't know if she made it through that. I hope to God she did, and her prayers are with us. But I mean, what are we, day 55 now?
Is right. Just looking at that poor woman, how can you not want to help her?
Yeah.
Unless you don't have a heart and you don't have a soul.
The other videos we saw of her were they felt a little more scripted. Obviously, it was early on in the investigation, and when I was in Arizona, we knew that the FBI was going in to help her actually shoot them. And this is a longer form interview that's coming out over several days. Do you think she's able to just talk about what she wants to now, or do you think the FBI is still involved in helping her craft her answers in an interview like this?
I think a lot of what she's said so far, and which we'll see that she says tomorrow or whenever they let this out. But I think a lot of it is from her heart. But I think there will be things in there that the FBI
Yes.
has strongly suggested.
Jenny, I heard that. Lisk is pleading guilty. But isn't that funny? Lisk is just like this Nanos thing where they changed the chief of police, they changed everybody, and then within like a month later, the freaking thing was solved. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy though? That it's just like this Nanos thing. They had a guy, the chief of police in the Long Island, who it was a little different. He was like having sex with prostitutes and he was like a bad dude. So he had to cover up a lot of his tracks and he was scared he was going to get caught. But as soon as they removed his ass, they caught Gilgo 4 Rex.
Suggested that she mentioned, because it's every time she goes on, you have to know that the offender or offenders are watching, unless they're south of the border. Because as remember when you went down there and no one even heard of her? It was crazy.
Yeah. I'm still very curious if Mexico will end up having something to do with this. And I mean, obviously not like the government. I just mean like someone going back to Mexico. And I found it just strange how quickly authorities said we have no reason to believe anyone went to Mexico or that Mexico was involved. Like how I still don't understand why they said that. How do they know that if they don't know anything?
Okay, real quick, I just want to do this for Handsome Man. Handsome Man, can you hear me? Oh shit, you might not be able to hear me. Handsome Man, can you hear me? All right, if you can't hear me, but law enforcement is re-examining potential headlights behind porch guy. Was the DNA overlooked? They believe it looks like the possible vehicle lights are moving in the background. It adds credibility to the theory that there was a second perpetrator, which I think there's like 3 or 4. Potential crime scene at the construction site where it looks like the headlights are coming from. Law enforcement might not have had a reason to think construction site was involved, which now that's why they're looking at it. Theory about the dogs. They can be affected or respond to frequencies given off by certain signal jammers. This aligns with the neighbors stories saying that their dogs woke up on both January 31st and January 11th. And this was all coming from someone that was speaking on News Nation. So anyways, I'll play it again.
They probably felt that the people were too comfortable on the front porch, that they
Sounds good.
That they knew too much. They had to be nearby. The circuitous route that is that neighborhood is hard to figure out. That's the GPS and the signal strength is just non-existent. So, I mean, I guess there were all kinds of things they were putting together, and they probably had a good couple of leads at that point. But now those leads have all dried up. So now it looks like anything's in play. But if you look at her statement from the other day or whenever that was, she said that the people of Tucson are going to be the ones that are going to provide the information that's going to solve this investigation.
Yeah, and in that statement, she also specifically referenced January 11th, which
right.
You and I have been talking about that for a while. I knew that the FBI was asking the neighbors about that date, but it had never really come out in an official way. Like she actually referenced that date in her statement, which is 3 weeks before the abduction. It's a weekend. How significant do you think it is that she's now referencing that date in officially in a Guthrie statement?
Well, because I think at first they weren't able to definitively say if it was the 11th, but a lot of my colleagues were saying, because my first thought was, hey, they loaded her up in the car and now he came back to the front porch to make sure he didn't leave anything, because it was a bit of a struggle when they were getting out of there. Like did a phone fall out of his pocket, or it wouldn't be the first time that a phone has been left at the scene accidentally, or maybe a glove or anything along those lines. But if you look in the background, it was way too dark. And it was too dark because it wasn't the night of the full moon. That full moon was one of the most powerful full moons that we've had in a very, very long time.
Guys, this just came from the interview source, that detective guy. This is exactly what he put. This is Chris McDonough from the interview room. I'm going to put this in the chat. This is exactly what he said. This is exactly Chris McDonough, interview room. I just looked up his X account, and this is what he thinks. This is that detective. I think you guys know him.
Time. And it was a super moon, and it was, I mean, it lit up. You could see in the background that you could see the light hitting on the night of her, that she was abducted. You could see the light hitting the ground behind the offender. There was the chance in my mind that the pixelation could have had something to do with that, or the camera, whatever, because you couldn't see the eye holes in the mask, or there's a lot of issues with that photo to begin with. But with it being dark in the background, you know, it was considered by a couple of my colleagues that I really trust that it had to be a different night. And I was like, well, if it's a different night, man, that does kind of pull the family out of focus a little bit for me, because the family isn't going to have to, you know, they're not going to have to do recon missions and all this other kind of stuff on our house. They know the house, unless it, you know. So that was, but this was before the family was even cleared, as you well know. So I was thinking that just yanked them out of focus a little bit for me, or pulled them out of the frame a little bit.
Yeah, and I've heard that even without a timestamp, there's ways based on the moon and the lighting that the FBI can determine like a date even, or a time frame, which is interesting.
If it's really clear.
Yeah.
But in a pixelated photo like that, nothing's really clear. You can't even tell, you know, like the backpack looked light gray and it was actually black, I guess, or whatever, who knows. It's just more than 50 days, man. I never thought we'd be this far out. But then I keep going back to the Corey Richards case. Everybody thought, she got away with murder, and it wasn't until a year later that they were able to really put a case together, because you only have one chance to charge someone with murder. That's it. So you got to make it stick, and you got to make it right.
Yeah, that's true.
So whoever they have, if they have anybody.
Just back to the February 11th, I think there was some confusion too, because we had sources telling us that this other picture was from a previous date, but the sheriff was pushing back. I don't know if you remember, the sheriff was then saying, that's not true. We have no way of knowing for sure. And then I would go back and check with our source, and they're like, no, it's definitely from a previous date. I'm like, why is the sheriff so...
Wait a minute, that's very interesting. So, that's crazy. I got, and again, it's not a big deal, and I'm not saying this because it is a big deal, but I got that, there's that Kia that's in the back parking lot of the El Charro restaurant in a 2024 Google Earth photo. And typically restaurant workers stay at their jobs. But it's funny you said Chris used to investigate crimes related with restaurant workers arranged by owners of restaurants. Oh, it's funny you said that, because I'm still thinking I don't know. When I worked in a restaurant, I knew a lot of people that walked in, and they were like regulars. A lot of old people too, that constantly talked my ear off.
Pushing back so hard on this. And now he's done another interview just within the last week where he has said, oh, actually, we do think it's from a previous date. Google told us that it was from the 11th, but then they came back and said, well, we can't be sure, but we still do think it's from a previous date. We think it's an important date. I'm just wondering, did his messaging, is that damaging in terms of trying?
Here, look, here. Again, for those, I'm just going to put it one more time. For those that didn't see this is Chris McDonough's take from the interview room. If Peggy didn't see this, I just want to show you. This is Chris McDonough from the interview room. This is what he thinks. Yeah, true.
Trying to get this information out to the public and trying to get them to take a date seriously, because here you have the Guthrie family now acknowledging it, but the sheriff for so long was saying no, everybody's wrong. We don't know why people are saying that.
You're assuming people are listening to him, and at this point I don't think that's the case, unfortunately. And I really hate to say that, because normally this is what we point to. We point to the press conferences. Whatever comes out of a press conference is golden, and it usually proves to be that way in court. When we watch trials afterwards. So I don't know. I honestly, if he said that, I didn't even hear him say that because I don't pay attention anymore. And that's not good.
Well, I've seen that in some of the comments too. People are starting to just not really take what he says seriously, which I mean, technically he's still in charge of the investigation.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's not a good thing. Have you been following? I mean, there's a recall that's now starting to take shape where they want to get a special election.
Well, but we also got to understand that restaurant workers and owners do know people in that area. Like there's a big drug cartel, obviously, that route. So no, I understand your point, Gen X, but people know people as well. So not just like the one guy is going to set it up. You never know gang affiliation, what they're affiliated with, who their drug dealers are, who they're talking to. But yeah, I totally understand what you mean. It could be a mechanic, an engineer, electrician, of course, especially by the way he was able to take the nest down so fast and the ability. It could be like one of those, where they brought a few different people with different trades together, right? That's what they did in the Lufthansa heist or whatever.
To try and throw him out, essentially. And he was previously working in El Paso decades ago, and he left and then came on at the Pima County Sheriff's Office. This is the sheriff. But it turns out, I never talked about this, but a local reporter went back and got the records, and he had, kind of a shady history in El Paso Police. He was suspended like 8 times, use of force issues, a variety of issues, and never told anybody about that in Pima County, allegedly. And even in a deposition, when he was asked, have you ever been suspended before? He said no. And so now this has become a real issue, and it's become part of the recall. And there was even a board of supervisors meeting, which is, the government agency that oversees the body that oversees Pima County. And they voted unanimously to look more into it. I mean, your former law enforcement, does that concern you that he was asked specifically in a deposition, have you ever been suspended, and said no, when he had in fact been suspended 8 times?
Yes, that disturbs me. But I have to also call out Pima County. I mean, if this guy, how long was he in El Paso as a police officer? Just a couple of years, right?
He was young. Yeah, he was in his 20s. And,
so he was only there a couple of years. He's suspended 8 times, all these different allegations, and no one
people
in
been
Pima
saying
County
construction,
even
electricians
bothered to find that out. Where's their
they're
due
interviewing
diligence?
as many people as they
They
can.
can
There's a
point
lot of
fingers all they
subcontractors.
want.
That's the problem.
They hired this person. When you're a police officer now, when you're trying to become a police officer, not only are you taking polygraph exams, they're looking at your background, they're looking at your school records from when you were in grade school. They interview everyone, like a teacher from grade school, teacher from middle school, teacher from high school, teacher from college. It is so rigid and so strict to become a police officer anywhere. That's how it is now. In many, many cases, these background investigations, even going back then, would have found all this stuff out. Pima County's got some culpability here too. They can't point everything at him. The fact that he lied under oath, absolutely, that's what's going to get him fired right now. That's going to get him fired. He's gone, in my opinion. He's going to be gone. But there's no way that this was a secret, that this guy had all these issues, all these problems in his jacket, as we call it, his file or whatever. This guy was well known to have all kinds of issues. Anyone that's suspended that much is just a problem child, which is why he had to leave. How did they not see any of that? It's dereliction on their part also.
And the union did another vote
Right, guys,
of no confidence, which they've done before, but this one
Yeah.
was recent, like since the Nancy Guthrie investigation. There's 100 deputies in the union, and it was unanimous. So
it was unanimous with the deputies in the union. Okay.
Yeah, which is
not the ones that aren't union. Okay.
That's correct. But the majority, it's my understanding the majority of the deputies are in the union. I mean,
okay.
Does that say should we be disturbed by that?
Yeah, I mean that's another huge problem, a huge hurdle for him. It's going to be really hard. It's hard for a person to lead in a situation like that. And in a situation like that, I would expect the deputies, like I said before, they're working arm in arm, hand in hand with the FBI, and they may be not telling the sheriff everything
easy with the
because of
swearing.
situations like this. If he's a micromanager, which that's what I'm hearing, that he's a total micromanager. Nobody likes working for a micromanager, especially in a big case. Big cases are hard enough as it is. The last thing you need is some micromanager breathing down your neck.
Yeah,
But I don't think he's going to survive this. This is what, in the business, this is what we call an unsurvivable.
He is elected, though. I mean, they can't just fire him. I mean, there has to be a huge process here. You know what I mean? It's not like with a police chief where it's like the city
Oh,
council
but lying under oath,
that comes back to get you, huh?
yeah, that's going to be real hard.
I was just thinking, I've had jobs before where they'll send out these anonymous surveys and you can kind of like talk about how happy you are and what you think about your boss. And I'm always like nervous to really, like, I never trust those things. I'm always like,
I don't either.
They're going to know who said what, but I'm just thinking about these deputies. I mean, for all of them to vote no confidence, and then you have to work there and this is your boss and you probably have to talk to the man. It must be kind of awkward.
Yeah, it is awkward. We used to have in the Bureau, they would say that these are anonymous surveys, but how long have you been in the Bureau? What division do you work in? All this other stuff. We're like, if you say you're in 22 years and you're in the Los Angeles division, there aren't that many of us that have been in the that have 22 years in law. It's easy to figure out is what I'm saying. So we were always very cautious too, but then the inspectors would come face to face. And these inspectors one time, it was one of the few bosses I couldn't take this person. But they said, you have to be able to say something. I said, I'm not saying anything. I'm just not going to, Maureen, I cannot fill this out without, you have to tell me something. And I was like, okay, he's clean shaven. I mean, that's all I can think to say. And he's like, you're not making it easy on me. But so they tried to get that from us. It just, early on in my career, it didn't seem to make much difference. But I have to say that as time went on, they apparently did start listening to people, and it did make a difference. So that's always good. And I really started seeing these things shape opinions later on in my career, which I think is good. And it looks like that may be what's happening here.
Okay.
But he's got all kinds of hurdles, all kinds of problems, all kinds of issues, all coming together at one time. It's a storm, and he may not make it out.
At the end of the day, though, do you think, even if he's got all these issues, and it seems pretty clear that he does now with some of the stuff that we're seeing, do you think it's impacted the Nancy Guthrie investigation? I mean, do you think we'd still be here day 50 plus if he didn't have these issues?
It is. Please, guys, stop. We gotta.
I think the initial issue with the crime scene is going to go down as a problem. And I'm not throwing any shade at crime scene techs from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. These people have to do extraordinary work in terrible conditions with very few people doing the actual work. And it's not easy work. It's mind work. It's, you have to be theorizing about things. You have to make sure you're doing the right thing, the right technique at the right time. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 techniques that you can apply to get DNA, let's say, for example, but you have to put them in order so that one doesn't jeopardize the next or the third one, if that makes any sense. So I think the crime scene thing at the beginning is going to end up being a problem for the investigation, and it's going to be a problem for the prosecution if, in fact, if it ever comes to that. I don't know.
I was listening to I've tried to get interviews with him lately and haven't had much luck. It seems like he does them with NBC, and I'm guessing that's because of the Savannah connection.
Okay.
And they haven't really asked him anything from what I can tell about some of these issues that he's dealing with. But in one of the interviews, and he did a radio interview, and I listened to them all really carefully because he says little things sometimes that it almost feels like kind of slip out, So I'm trying to see if there's anything new.
Hey, Alicia.
And in one of the more recent ones, he said something about the DNA, and he still had hope in the DNA, and that there were 2 labs working on it, which I thought was interesting because I remembered that it just went to the Florida lab. So it made me wonder, is there now a second lab? Because remember, they were having issues. The DNA was.
Yep.
So maybe they've sent it to another lab that, you know, specializes more in the genetic genealogy, something like that. But that stood out to me, and that he still brought the DNA up. So, you know,
Well, they could have done something else when they put that tent up around the front door.
Yeah.
They could have done some type of DNA on the clamp that holds up the Nest camera. They could have done tape lifting on that front mat. They could have, you know, done fingerprints or something, some kind of swabbing on the doorknob, door handle. Who knows? I don't know.
so
Were
maybe
you guys able to get in the backyard when people went in the backyard?
No.
Like if you had so they could have done something with the back door also, which now we know it was the back door that was the point of entry, right? Is that correct?
there's some reporting out there. Yeah, I haven't been able to confirm that, but I've heard others report it. It wouldn't surprise me based on what you and I have talked about, and when you talked about the security door in the front, and
Yeah, there's no getting through that without leaving a mark.
yeah.
You can't.
And if it's in fact true, and again, I don't have this reporting, but I've heard other people talk about it, that she's left her doors open. I mean, just being in that neighborhood for so long, working there, you know, reporting there and talking to neighbors, I think a lot of people left their doors open. I mean, it's quiet, and she's lived there since the 70s. I know nobody should do that, but that doesn't really.
Yeah, but can't you hear the scary music in the background?
Yeah,
Oh my God, when people
I know, but it's like, you know,
sometimes it's the simplest solution that is the difference between being safe and something like this.
yeah. One other thing I was looking at is all the Airbnbs in the neighborhood, and there's quite a few of them in short-term rentals. Do you think the FBI is looking into that? Like,
Yes, absolutely.
can they just go to Airbnb and
Yep,
try to
that's
get a
what we were
list of
doing with
everybody who stayed at
Airbnb.
these places? Or 'cause
Yeah,
there's
they'll
one
subpoena.
right in the corner.
Yeah, they'll subpoena them for sure, and they'll find these people out. I'm sure they've been interviewed, I'm sure they've been interviewed by now. Absolutely. Anyone that stayed there during that time period, and I would suggest they would probably go back a couple months, especially in that house right around the corner.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't want.
And the other thing
We
I
don't
was
want
thinking
craziness
about, because the
here.
neighbors have been texting me, they're like, get ready. There was a really hot week last week. And then, you know, summers there are like, everyone's like, it's just miserable. I mean, it's like 115 degrees weeks at a time. And a lot of people leave. Like, people are seasonal. You know, this is like a second home for them, and they get out of there in the summer.
Did Nancy traditionally go away?
No, I don't think so. I think she was there.
Wow.
I think from what I mean, I've never heard that she had like a second house or anything like that. But a lot of people do leave.
Maybe
because
she would go typically and stay with Savannah for a month or two, or her son.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I would wonder though, now that she was, you know, getting older and had the mobility issues. I don't know if it was more difficult for her to travel.
No, not at all.
But
not at
I'm just wondering, like, when you're an investigator,
all. No.
is it an issue? Like, I even think back to Idaho. You know, the students left at one point, and it was like, how are they going to talk to all these students because they've all just left town? Is it a similar situation here if a lot of the neighbors leave and people leave?
Well, they've all been interviewed, and the investigators have contact information for all these people, and so they can call them if they need to. The difference with Idaho is they were leaving like right after the murders happened, so it was like a scatter city. But law enforcement is very accustomed to reaching out to, whether it be the FBI or other police departments, reaching out to other entities, agencies, municipal law enforcement agencies, and asking them to make contact with an individual and ask the following questions. So you send them a couple of reports, you send them a series of questions, and they'll go do the interview for you, and then they write it up and get it back to you.
So they'll use other
Oh, yeah,
agencies to help
Natasha.
them out.
If it's a really big interview, we'll send agents to go do the actual interview, and Pima County sheriffs will probably themselves go out and ask questions. If it's a situation that's got some depth and some breadth, and you need to know a lot of these ins and outs and the players involved and stuff like that, then it's good to have one of the team investigators head out there and conduct the investigation themselves.
What about, you remember the 2 raids? There was the one in Rio Rico, which was near Mexico, and then there was
Yep.
the 2 miles. So we talked to the lawyer for
Oh, I'm glad you
Carlos,
made
who
it
was
up.
the Rio Rico, just yesterday, the Rio Rico, I don't want to say person of interest, the person who was detained. And he's now gotten his phone back. The lawyer still hasn't seen the search warrant, so still doesn't really have any information about what led to all that, but they did return the phone. And I'm not
It's
sure
kind of
about-
interesting
why, what's
that
interesting.
they didn't get a copy of the warrant.
Yeah, no, it's still sealed. So he still doesn't know.
Oh, it's still sealed. You're right. I forgot that one was sealed. Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
so he still doesn't know why his client why this all went down the way it did. And the same thing with the other guy
Good morning, Rebecca.
from 2 miles away with the other big raid that I was at. Do you
Well, I
think
think it's fairly obvious that they were some of the cars that were being seen or driving around the neighborhood and possibly stopping nearby, and their thought might have been, oh, they stopped their car 2 doors down, probably to get out and walk the perimeter and then get back in their car. You're thinking like that, and there weren't really any other hits on the vehicles. So when you have an absence of something like, we don't have a vehicle that we're currently looking for, you have to look for the other tertiary vehicles that may have been in the neighborhood and may have parked a block away, even if it's for 20 minutes or 15, just to maybe walk the perimeter of the location. So, you start looking at things in that kind of a light. And that's why I think they felt that these people
I
may have
did.
been involved. And when
Deanna,
you have
I
someone
thought I
the
did.
day
Okay, hold
before
on.
and their life is threatened by the lack of medication and their age and a pacemaker and things like that, it ramps things up for the judge when you go in to get a warrant signed.
Do you think, though, at this point we can kind of move on from those 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
I know some people say no, but
No. You are a managing moderator.
At this point, Brian,
DD, it says you are a managing moderator. Here, I'll send you a screenshot.
this thing could break open in a number of different ways, and one more of those guys may be involved, like that guy with the Range Rover, because that car, I believe, was purchased like the week or 2 before Nancy was taken, and I think that car was something like $17,400 or something, but I'm not so sure all these guys aren't involved. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know enough about it. I don't know about the information that led them to these guys.
Yeah.
If they're just building a case against them, yeah, they could still be tied to this in some way, shape, or form. I know there was some other kind of loose association between the mom and, was it Mrs. Guthrie or
Yeah, the mom said that she I think was a fan and ran into her in the grocery store like years ago.
Yeah.
When she was with Savannah. I guess at some
that's
point
not that weird though.
No, it wasn't that. Well, I just think at some point the sheriff or someone is going to have to say, those 2 are cleared, because it does seem kind of unfair to them if this really was just a mistake, or not a mistake, but they did the search warrant. Okay, these aren't the guys, to just leave it open. And that's what their lawyers say. I mean,
It's due diligence. You've got to do it.
but don't you think to leave it open-ended does seem kind of, if that was me, I'd be like, can you just say I didn't do it? I mean,
Yeah.
But I guess they're not going to do that right now.
No, they're not. So so that's why I changed my tune, and I'm going to stick with we shall see on those 3.
Okay.
All 3 of them.
Yeah.
Now, didn't the guy, what was the connection between the guy in the Range Rover and the other, the house with the mom and son?
The house was the mom. He just lives with the mom, and it was
Right.
the mom was home when they went and raided the house.
Right. But are they connected at all with that guy with the Range Rover?
Yeah, that's his Range Rover. That's the son's Range Rover. So,
Yep. Okay.
And just
so the jury's still out on that one then.
Yeah, we'll see, and we'll have to. Yeah, I'll keep following up with their lawyers and stuff, just because it'd be very interesting to see the search warrant and what because obviously a federal judge signed off on it. So,
So there's probable cause for sure.
Yeah. And lastly,
and when we see the probable cause, we'll have a much better. We'll be able to talk through that when we can go through that whole warrant and we'll be able to have a much better understanding of what in fact drew law enforcement toward them.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we get it, we'll do it. Lastly, though, I just got some new cameras just because I was like, I need new cameras after this whole thing, you know? What do you
Oh, Brian needs new cameras. Uh-oh. Come on, Brian's everywhere. What does he need new? Well, I guess maybe because he's never home.
think? You mentioned at the beginning you had some other ideas for people who, you know,
You just need a
older
gun,
people,
right?
really anybody.
Right. Anybody. Well, considering the fact that she left her door open, it's just one of the worst things you can do. And I don't care where you live. How many times have we seen news reports where the first thing all the neighbors say is, we never ever thought something like that could happen in this neighborhood? And I know that we all want to live in these idyllic places where crime like this doesn't happen. But guys, if you look at so many of these heinous crimes, they all happen in places where no one thought crime like that could exist or flourish. So, number one, have a plan. Put a plan together. And even if the plan is like, if someone breaks into my house, I'm calling 911 and I'm throwing my phone under the heaviest dresser
Oh yeah, right.
or under the bed. Because what does that mean? The bad guy can't pick it up and hang it up. And you can yell even while you're being attacked. Number two, if you hear someone at your door, you can first call someone and just hang up with the understanding, hey, if I ever call you and hang up, call 911. I need either a welfare check or someone's breaking in the house. The only time I'm going to call you is if someone's breaking into my house. And then I'm going to hang up and dial 911 too. But if I'm unable to, you have to call also. You know, have a plan like that. The problem is if your back door is wide open, the plan's out the window because you're not even going to see it coming. Sometimes all you need, you know, like a lot of gun owners, we may not need a whole lot of time, but we need some time. So lock your bedroom door. Your bedroom door. Why? Because you'll hear someone at the door. Now, this doesn't apply to Nancy because of her hearing aids, but you could hear someone at your bedroom door, and that could give you enough time to call 911. It could also give you enough time to get your gun. If you're, you know, and your gun should be relatively close to you at night while you sleep.
I never thought about throwing the phone under the bed or under that's a really good idea. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
because I mean, if they bend down to reach under to get the phone, take off.
Right. And then they'll still hear you, and the 911 operator will still hear everything going on if it's just thrown under the.
And I probably got to pause Brian Enton every like 20 seconds, or this is like not good. 1 second here. Let me see what else we got going on.
I have an elderly couple, friends of ours, and they weren't elderly at the time, but they were probably 55, and both French, both very polished and elegant. And she called me like in the middle of the night, freaking out, but the situation had ended. But she said that someone broke into her second-story condo. And when they broke, I was like, oh my gosh, are you guys okay? She said, yes, well, we carry, with her thick accent, we keep baseball bats under the bed. We each have one on each side. And when we heard him breaking in because he was making noise because the window was locked, you know, sometimes you just need enough time to grab something. And they had baseball bats under their bed. And the two of them went to Louisville on this offender and just.
So I'm going to be going to Tucson. I'm just letting everybody know Tuesday. So because you know we need to talk to people and there has to be more stuff going on because I'm just replaying the videos of the same thing. So I feel bad, but I hope people are enjoying this. We're trying to show what we can show. I know this is Brian Enton. Please subscribe to his channel. I'm sure everyone has.
Cleaned his clock, and they were and then they called the police, and the police came and the medics came and dragged him out. So he got nothing except several concussions, which is a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, and with Nancy, obviously,
that wasn't going to happen. No.
Older, and there were medical issues, but sometimes you do have to fight.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend that keeps a drumstick under the pillow. I'm not really sure what you can do with the drumstick, but I guess if you're skilled with a drumstick, it's better than nothing. It would not be my weapon of choice, obviously.
Yeah, a baseball bat would be better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
With the crime scene and the tape coming down, and many people say it was too early the first time, you know, after Nancy went missing. Who would actually make that decision typically?
The crime scene team would usually make a recommendation to whoever was the on-scene commander or the detective in charge or, you know, the FBI person in charge. We would say, hey, we've ticked all the boxes. We got everything done. I don't think we're going to need anything else here. And we're ready to wrap. And if they say that, it goes up the chain. And, you know, the sheriff could have said yes or no. The other thing to consider, as you can imagine, is because we know we only have one shot. I mean, you can go back with the consent, but with regard to a warrant, with stuff that falls under the umbrella of the warrant, you have that one shot. Other forensic people that you've had on, and all the ones I know, and me myself from my personal experience, if someone said, hey, we have the FBI coming in, they're going to be here today or tomorrow, we would keep the crime scene open in case there's anything else they want to do, because I mean, that to me would have just been a basic courtesy. So even if let's say the FBI is doing a big case and it turns out that the person who's murdered is an LA County sheriff.
Oh, that's a
and now
great
the
point,
sheriff
Rebecca.
is going to come in and join
That's a great point.
our case. And I've been working the crime scene. I would say, sir, we've done everything that we can. We think we have everything. But if you want the sheriff, if you want to give them the opportunity to come in and go over what I've done and make sure that they're cool with everything, I'm happy to walk them through the crime scene, show them exactly what we did, how we did it, and what we're planning on doing in the future. And if they're comfortable with that, then what, you know, and they would say, that's a good idea, let's do that. Because it's the difference between building a bridge and burning a bridge down. You know, and I've told you before that these crime scene teams are often very small, and everyone knows the ERT team is huge, and we put a lot of money into training.
Oh
and
yeah,
we'll
that's
have
a great
blood
idea,
pattern,
Crystal.
Experts on the ERT team that's going to show up.
Crystal, that you always have the best ideas with that stuff and interviewing people. Can we text today about how? Oh, that is perfect, Crystal. That is super smart.
Up, not just later on down the line after you take your photos and stuff. We have people that have taken weeks and months of training just in blood pattern analysis, etc. And these type of things can give you a lot of information, and they, you know, just people with a lot of experience that could just help, not take over, just assist, and maybe do 5 or 6 other they would have absolutely taken that rug out in front. They would have taken the door handles. They would have taken the casing on the camera in front. They probably would have taken that back door off, depending, you know, or at least the doorknob.
As always, I really appreciate Maureen for taking the time to talk with me. Appreciate you guys for watching the episode, staying, you know, interested in this case. I think that we have to keep it in the spotlight, or
Okay, so the next one we can show, it's totally up to you, and we can pause it. Different segment. There's a new one on Jennifer Koffendorfer. If you'd like to see her, we can. But that is awesome, Crystal. I do think if it was a cartel, it would be like a low-level cartel guy, like a tweaker or like a peasant, the guy that the cartel like kind of isn't allowing to move up in ranks, like a guy that just maybe packs the drug mule trucks that's getting a couple grand a week, 3 or 4 grand a week, where he's mad because maybe his coke addiction, they're not letting him move up. So then he's doing like petty crimes. If you ever see the movie, obviously like Casino, you know, the hole in the wall gang Joe Pesci started while Robert De Niro ran the casino, and then he started robbing jewelry stores because he wasn't making enough money. Okay, let's try. I guess we can play Jennifer, but we got to just be careful, like playing. I don't want to get copyright strike, but let's see what she says, I guess. And if no one wants to see it, we can always try something else. Just give me a second here.
an investigative lens, and just so many epiphanies here. I did a tweet just now, but I just wanted to come out and do a quick show on all of this information. It's really remarkable. So first of all, initial impressions. Please have a box of Kleenex next to you if you're going to listen to this. It's very, very difficult. Savannah is raw, she's real, and it is heartbreaking to hear the pain and to see the pain in her face that she is going through when she's talking about this case. And I think the biggest reason that her pain is so raw and so real is she says on this interview that she believes she's responsible. Now, whether that's accurate or not, it doesn't really matter. It's her perception. She says she even asked her brother, Cameron, who's a fighter pilot, former military, a guy that's squared away. She always describes him as just so incredibly intelligent, which she also says about her sister, Annie. But she asked him, do you think it could be me? And basically he responds in affirmative. So, it makes almost my throat pucker up like when you eat a lemon. I remember that's how I felt almost
No,
every
no, no, no.
day
Yep.
when I would think about my mom and when I gave her eulogy.
No, Jenny, I definitely agree. If you ever watch the movie like Donnie Brasco's, like, so you do, I'm not saying like the cartels could give two shits about $4 million. That means nothing. All I was saying, I think Peggy had made a great point, but all I was saying is a 1% theory is like literally like not everybody in the cartel obviously is driving Ferraris and having lions and going crazy. You have the people that are working in the plazas, which are like the warehouses that are in dark all day and they're loading in the drug trucks. I'm just saying like a 1% chance it could be a disgruntled guy of the cartel because all those guys want to move up like a corporation. So I'm just saying the people at the bottom that the cartel might think is just not the man for a job to keep promoting up might get disgruntled. But no, I agree 100%. It's not like El Chapo, El Mencho, or anybody. No one gives a shit about $4 million for how much they're making. I'm talking about like the real low level, not even like the paramilitary guys that fight for the cartel. I'm talking just like your rookie guys they recruit. But I mean, yeah, the cartel's not messing with the grandma, right? I'm just saying like a one-off. Like if you watch Casino, Joe Pesci is a hole in the wall gang. So he's a outfit guy and he's not making enough money. So he starts this little crew and he starts breaking jewelry and selling jewelry on the side. Like there's no point in doing that when you're in the Italian mafia and you're making money. But he was like a disgruntled outcast. But anyways, that's 1%. I agree. It has to be personal or something. But I just wanted to cover my tracks. There's no way like El Chapo's, like, you know what I mean, or like El Mayo. I mean, they're caught now, but like someone of that stature, they're not going after American. That would bring so much heat on them. That would be like the kiss of death to go after Savannah Guthrie. So I agree. I'm just talking about some like just peasant street gang cartel guy that like might pack, the movie Mule with Clint Eastwood, those guys that fill those trucks up in the plaza, just a pissed off guy that maybe no one likes and he's just going to try to make a buck. But yeah, I don't think it's cartel, right? Exactly.
This is so hard on her, but I can't
Oh,
imagine
okay.
how
No,
difficult
but
it
I'm
would be if you had some sense of responsibility. And of course, obviously, this isn't Savannah's fault. It's nobody's fault except the kidnappers and the perpetrators of this crime. No one else's fault. So, you know, she shouldn't hold herself responsible, but she does. And I think you can just hear that pour off the interview. I want to key on, though, the investigative nuggets that we got from this. So, beyond looking back past that emotionalness, and then I'm going to end with one last emotional thing that really hit me. But beyond that, from an investigative lens, from an FBI lens, as far as Nancy, huge things came out in this interview. Number one, she was taken in her pajamas with no shoes. That's the first time we've heard those details. Why is that so incredibly important? Well, when you are whisked out like that, this means to me they likely did
okay.
not spend that much time, and they also could have given a care less about Nancy Guthrie. Nothing about, I mean, she could have been screaming, begging. They could care less. I think this happened swiftly and quickly. I think that whole time frame is off because people just want to take um, the 41 minutes
Yeah, or like
based
Shaq
on
said, like a
the
golf cart. Yeah.
147, and then they want to subtract that from the 228 with the disconnection. And because of the
Yeah, with Jennifer
camera that was
Kavanagh.
outside that caught a figure at 212,
No,
I think
this
that
I have to
changes the
pause.
whole
This is going to be a
timeline.
copyright strike
And I
if I
will
sit here and
say,
play this.
I was another one that was definitely looking at that until the 212 information came out. And I think that 212 information from law enforcement from her own camera really changed everything. And no longer, I just don't think we can think of them as being in that period of time. I think they snatched her, they grabbed her, they harmed her. I don't know from a stress standpoint as a tactical medic, I do not know if she could have even survived the initial looking up, seeing porch guy before her, standing over her bed, grabbing her, just the hyperperfusion that takes place when somebody is feeling so much stress like this. Stress, fear, this is what it causes the body to do. Hyperventilation, which causes difficulty in breathing. You combine that with typically low blood pressure or very high blood pressure, and then combined with your pulse rate going through the roof. So typically your blood pressure completely drops ultimately when you hypoperfuse. In other words, your blood
Oh
just
wait, let
can't
me put up
circulate
Jennifer's
to
thing.
your heart and to your mind and to your lungs because of fear and stress. And we heard the reason.
I actually, just so you have to pause these because of copyright stuff. I actually referred because of my little ticker and big deal, but I'm just saying I actually referred a few people that watched my show that didn't even know Jennifer Kavanagh existed, and then I was happy to see they were sending her super chats. So she could probably knock me out for doing this, but you got to pause it every couple minutes. But I did refer Kara over to her show, and then Kara was donating her super chat. So, you know, so for what it's worth, that this gives her a little bit of free publicity with people that might not know her, but I'm sure like everybody knows her because she's an ex FBI and she's a super smart lady.
I'm going back to this is we heard Savannah discuss that her mom, for her to walk just short distances, would be in so much pain. And pain also causes those same reactions. When you're in pain, your pulse rate, drives up. Your respirations get heavier because you're suffering from pain. So now we have somebody who we know suffered from chronic, serious pain when she would just walk. It was very difficult for her, who is being grabbed, the pain that would cause. She's bleeding. Again, I'll show this room. She's trapped, which I mentioned from the beginning, absolutely trapped in a corner, no place to go. Speed, surprise, violent of action, a gun. She would have been absolutely.
Oh, sorry. Well, she's
So
the
anyway, that was a.
Yeah, Tasha, just to go over your comment, right now we just don't have many options left, like covering this case. There's not a lot of Nancy Grace. There's not anybody. Uh, so we're just trying to go through this just a little bit longer. I'll try to find some more like clip-its. I just woke up and was a little unprepared this morning.
Another thing we heard for the first time. Secondarily, or in addition to, it's not second. In fact, I would say that's the first most important thing is that the ransom notes, at least two, Savannah Guthrie believes are real. And that makes sense to me because they came on television, they did all these appeals. Why did they do that? Because they thought it was real. What did the FBI say? He thought they were real. And I think that, at least two of them, all those other ransom notes that, hey, listen, I know that the people have them and I can give you, if you give me money, I'll give you them. All that was fake. But I think she's referring to the very first two that TMZ brought up. I think there were six. She discounts the other four. Obviously, the ones that went to Tommy, which is how she refers to him, not Tommaso. Tommy and Annie, we know that those are not legitimate because that person was arrested. But I think the first two, and I know so many of us said, why would you go to the station? Why would you go and cause this pain and torment? So it really begs the question, if the ransom notes are real, again, I think what all of us said, were they real for money, or were they just real to torment and torture Savannah and her family? Because again, they went to the media, so it could be splashed all over the media. That tells me they wanted the recognition. They wanted this to be out there, to be known. Wow. So just a huge epiphany there. In addition, and I have so many notes, but I just want to keep this short because I know I'm coming on at the last minute and breaking away from what I was doing, but I think this is really important. She says early on, this is big, very early on, they knew this was a kidnapping. She said her brother knew, based on his military training, just his background, who he is, that this was a kidnapping. Law enforcement knew. Law enforcement, Nano says he had homicide on the scene that day. I know he's floundered. You know, 1 minute he says that the reason they pulled away crime scene was because they didn't really know what they had. And then the next minute he says, we knew from the beginning it was a kidnapping, or we've known from the beginning the motive. And she says, Savannah says, and I believe Savannah. So the words that come out of Savannah's mouth, I'm believing. The word that comes out of Nano's mouth, I have very little regard for in terms of his floundering. He says whatever he needs to say. So, you know, I can't give him a vote of confidence anymore. I used to always try to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't want to digress. This is all about Savannah and Savannah's message and what we learned. So nevertheless, very early on, they knew this was a kidnapping. Very early on. I mean, we saw her on screen. We saw those timelines that they gave. And then they never gave us the quid pro quo. In other words, if we don't get the money, then this is what's going to happen. But you see in the next one, she talks about essentially her mother not being with them. And then we see in between that Cameron going on and saying, listen, please tell us how to contact you. Please contact us, the family. I think the family would have paid. I think the family, they said they would have paid even for her remains.
I'm going to try to find Nancy Grace. Give me 1 second.
Burial. They want to know what happened. They need her to have closure. I think they're still willing to pay. But now these perpetrators are so scared that they do not want to get caught for this. They know they'll be facing the death penalty. They know it'll be a mess. And their lives will be completely lost if they come forward or anybody comes forward about them. So nevertheless, we know they knew early on. That's another major point. Another major point that she makes is about what it has done to them. And this isn't necessarily investigative, but it kind of is, because it says what Nanos wrote and what, quite frankly, myself and other normal people who are investigators, what we have all said, and anybody else and everybody who has maligned Tommy, now that I know he likes to be called that, Tommy and Annie and Savannah and Cameron, the family, totally off base. No, they are not involved. This isn't Tommaso. This isn't Annie. In fact, she talks so much about how the only reason at her age and with all of her health issues that Nancy was allowed to stay in her house, which she'd been at, I believe, again since 1975. All her memories are there. All Savannah's memories are there because she lived there since she was 4. She shared about that. Their father, that house was equivalent to their father. You know, I get it. These homes become very important to them. My husband's mother was widowed and she stayed in that house, never remarried. Reminds me a lot of ways of Nancy Guthrie. just sort of that vintage in that era. And that's all to say that I think many of us have grandparents that have been widowed, and this whole house held all the memories that she had created. So she felt very safe and very comfortable, and she wanted to stay there. And the reason she was able to was because of Annie and Tommaso, them coming over, them being around her, them being there, them caring for her. Savannah makes it crystal clear that they are not involved, which for those of you who don't want to believe anything Nanos says, he's spot on with that. And I always said, there is no way in my 28 years working a joint investigation that Nanos is going to put that out there without the FBI concurring with it. No possible way. So again, anybody who is watching, listening, that crap going out there about them being involved, it's just crap. And to hear her talk about that, she's speechless. She even says that. She says it's unbearable, piles pain on pain. I will never understand it. You know, she basically just can't talk enough about her relationship that Nancy had with Tommy and also with Annie and the whole family. She in fact describes the relationship. I think she says they are one unit. I think if I look back at my notes, she says they're one unit. That's how close they all are. So anyway, hopefully that will all put to bed any of the horrible idiots, and hopefully you all stop watching and get on their channels and tell them to go pound sand about Tommaso being involved, Tommy being involved. I guess he went by Tommy. We learned that. I want to talk about a couple of other things. That the camera, the Nest camera, was actually ripped from the wall. That's what she says. She uses those words, ripped from the wall. I think that's really important. Again, why? It talks to the lack of sophistication of this person. Listen, he's sophisticated enough to dodge the FBI and to dodge local law enforcement all this time. So I have to give him some credit. But we've always said the way that weapon was holstered, I mean, he wasn't a gangbanger, that was clear. He's not a cartel member, could be some peripheral part of a cartel or a cartel member. Wannabe cartels and bangers don't wear holsters. I mean, A to Z, this was not a legitimate cartel / gangbanger hit. This was something very different from that. And I'm not saying he's not sophisticated, but he yanked that stuff. I think a lot of us thought, well, perhaps he had tools and he undid it and he clipped wires. That's not what she says. She says ripped. And she said that's another reason they knew early on it was a kidnapping. So I think it's very important that detail is reemphasized. The other thing she talks about, okay, so she learns about it. Obviously, she's not there. She's with her children. Her husband had just gotten back from a tennis vacation, which was interesting that he's a big tennis player. And she gets on a plane and she comes out. But this is what's interesting. This, from a law enforcement standpoint, is interesting. That crime scene was not protected. Everybody was rolling in and out of this house, investigators, blah, 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 trampling the crime scene. She was trampling the crime scene. Everybody was trampling the crime scene, which ruins the crime scene. I'm just totally envisioning JonBenet Ramsey take 2 with people trampling in and out. Nobody cordoned it off. Nobody had a separate section with booties on for people to walk in. It would have been along an outside corridor typically, and only people with a need to be in there, with a need to know, like the people that are handling the crime scene investigation. That's all that needed to be in there. And the detective and the special agent. Oh, actually, an agent wasn't even involved then. Again, another Nanos talks out of this side, then goes to this side of his mouth. He initially said the FBI, well, he initially said only his people were involved Saturday night. You did not hear me wrong. That's what he said, Saturday night. Then he later says in an interview just recently with a local station. He says Sunday night. So again, another confusion. But the bottom line is the Bureau was not involved till later, although he says the Bureau was there Sunday night. That's what he says recently, even though later, before he says he brings them in later once he definitely confirms it's ransom. The bottom line is it is so horribly mishandled that even if they find the perpetrators, I don't know how they're going to succeed in adjudicating this. The crime scene is a hot train wreck. They were there, the Pima County did process it over a 20-hour period, but the Bureau went back and processed it, I think, 4 days later. Then the Bureau went back again to get the car and to get the cameras on the roof and who knows what else. And then later, the septic search. The point is, this crime scene, you have one chance at it. Anybody on here, anyone who has ever conducted a crime scene or an investigation involving a crime scene, you got one chance. That's it. That's it. I literally can't think of a time I've returned to a crime scene. I was trying to think of a time. Something sticks in my mind earlier in my career where I begged my supervisor to go back, which I had to write. I do vaguely remember this, and I think he okayed me, and I think I did another search warrant. Sorry, it's been, 20 plus years ago, and I did so many search warrants in so many cases, but I do vaguely remember, but I remember we had to start all over again with our search warrant to go back and look. This could be slightly different just because the family would have given permission. So we know that consent searches were done, for instance, at Annie and Tommaso's house, or Tommy's house. I'm going to call him by what he wants to be called. So we know that. But nevertheless, it's unheard of to go back all these times. It's just really unheard of, unless there's some significant change. And the fact that the entire crime scene would have been a hot mess anyway from everybody trampling it John Bonet style early on would have very much hurt their ability, no matter when they took DNA and fingerprints and everything else, would have hurt all of that. We know they didn't even take the French doormat, everybody. We beat that up. I want to get back to what she talked about. She verified that, though, all the people who were in there and things like that. So anyway, let's see. There were a couple other things that she particularly brought out that were from an investigative point of view. Oh, no meds. There's a lot of rumors circled around about a search warrant, and the search warrant was for meds. And so therefore she brought the meds. You know what? They didn't. She talks about that. And actually, at the very beginning of the case, they talk about that. They said she cannot survive more than 24 hours, likely, that her life would be in peril 24 hours without her medication. The pain, the blood thinners, she had a pacemaker, everything she would have been on to maintain her health, according to what they said early on, was that she wouldn't have had it. And then now Savannah Guthrie reinforces that and said she didn't have her medicine. So for everybody who speculated that medicine was taken, medicine wasn't taken, Savannah reinforces that. All right. Let me see. All right. This is huge. Savannah thanks law enforcement, and she says, listen, they have worked so very hard on this, that they're devoted. And I'm telling you, from being in these situations, you don't sleep, you don't want to eat in the first days. You know how critical the first 24 to 48 hours is. You literally eat, breathe, sleep these cases. You don't go home. You work till you can't work anymore. Then you grab 3 or 4 hours, and then you get back out there and pound the pavement and work the case again. I never went to a basketball game. I don't know anybody else who did. Sorry. I know that was a little bit of a jab.
Look at this real quick. This is Dee Dee me and Shibby doing a live stream, and here's me absolutely out cold. I didn't even know it. I think it went too long, and I was working that day though. That's pretty crazy. You see me in the top just sleeping. I'm like out cold, and there's Dee Dee trying to figure out how to end the stream yard. Okay, I'll get back to it. Sorry. Shoot.
I'm just saying what it's like in the first stages of a case like this. And Savannah drives this home. She says, you know, that law enforcement has been great, but then she gets a very sobering look on her face, very serious. And she says, but you know what? We don't have any answers. That is a big piece of information. Still no answers. I think we know that out here, and I maintain this case is not cold, because the definition of cold and the definition of not having a pointer to a subject are two different things. Cold is when you have nothing to follow up on. Law enforcement has so much to follow up on. The 30,000 leads. Think about that, everyone. Think about having one task a day. Do the dishes. Or how about this? Go grocery shopping. Think about 30,000 times you're supposed to go grocery shopping. It is so much that they have to follow up on, combined with all the video that's been turned in from Ring, from traffic lights, from traffic cams, from other neighbors up to, they kept it within 1.5 miles away, but then we know there's been other video turned in 2 miles away. Nevertheless, this is absolutely drinking from a fire hose for investigators and for analysts. And it's so much to pour over, and that takes so much time, everyone. Hours you're sitting there. This is you watching everything that happens on that
It's like
screen.
he's gonna put me to sleep.
Can't look away. When you do, you got to stop it to go to the bathroom, to take a bite, to take a call, and then you restart it again. That's what analysts in the Bureau are doing right now with video footage, starting with the video footage that would be most pertinent, right? You're really looking at a window of about 2:29, let's just say 2:28, and I would take it about an hour, and that's a lot. But you got to start with that earliest video footage, because no one knows exactly when he was there in advance. Although I thought it was very important that they put out, not only is the 11th important, but also Savannah says the 31st, the night of the 31st. Everybody's kind of blowing that off. Oh, the night of the 31st. Yeah, that's expected. Not really, because the night of the 31st is way different from the early morning hours of the 1st. In other words, did they do something smarter than Brian Koberger did and actually recon earlier that day? And is law enforcement looking for that? Do they have a reason to believe that? So, nevertheless, what Savannah tells us in this is law enforcement doesn't have a pointer. They have a lot of evidence, a lot of facts. I shouldn't call it evidence, a lot of key leads and interviews, and a lot to go over, but they don't have a direction. Exactly what she says. We need answers. And I'm telling you, that's because they don't have answers. That was critical that she said that. I want to make sure I touch on the most important things, and that's to do with the investigation side of things. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any of that before I move to just a couple more points before I let you guys go. Let me see.
Hey, all the credit to Jennifer on this one.
See.
I'm trying to find other articles. I'm sorry. Hold on. I kind of didn't
I
prep.
think I hit on them all. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So to recap the investigative points: pajamas, no shoes, which tells us whisked away without any care at all for this woman, the brutality of it. We also know that a slew of people were in and out of this house, investigators, I'm sure CBP, with their dogs. We saw the shirt of hers that they used that they just threw on the bushes afterwards. All the people that were in and out of that house, she describes that or touches on that. I think that's really important to know. This crime scene was a hot mess, even before the first time it was searched. And remember, there's been 4 searches. So crime scene issues that she discloses just in talking about all of this. The fact that 2 of those ransom notes they believe were real. And when we say real, it's not that we think, us in law enforcement, that they were necessarily for money, because you don't send those to and they came 3 days later, I believe, if I recall correctly. 3 days later, I'll have to look, 2 to 3 days later. It was afterwards. I think it was 3 days later. You don't do that if you really want ransom, but that begs the point: did they know they couldn't get it because she was already gone? She was already gone. So for that reason, they're just now toying and being evil to this family and making sure everyone knows they're in control. Everyone knows they're in control of this narrative by doing it the way they did this. That was really important. I think it backed up the fact that they at least
We do have,
believe,
if
that
there's Ashley Banfield. I don't know if you've
that
seen the
they
Ashley Banfield one. I'm
had
sure you guys did, but there's
particularly
that too. I don't know.
information to believe those notes were real, and they gave that to us, everyone. I do believe Nanos, when he said early on in the case, that is the same direction they were going then is the same direction they believe now. Occam's razor, kidnapping gone horribly bad for ransom because of Savannah Guthrie. But how are they targeted? And I'm telling you, and I've lost a little bit of faith now because of this billboard thing. The FBI won't change all those other billboards to show Porch Guy. They won't do them in Spanish. They won't show the 2.1 million reasons why somebody should go forward. You know, I'm befuddled with that. Or put them in the Tucson area, going south out of the town. I just don't get it. You know, I've talked to every single person I cut this case up with. You look at any one that you see online that's former bureau, that's former homicide, that you would respect, that's done the job for decades and decades and decades. They will tell you this needs to be done. And it makes me wonder if the Scottsdale case, that's similar in a lot of regards, you know, people out here ate and read, throwing a bone at 2 teenagers 6.5 hours away that are willing to commit a violent, brutal, sick act. In that case, they were 60-year-olds with a lot of money in a beautiful neighborhood in Scottsdale, an hour and a half north of her, one day before her. You're telling me that this could not be organized where they're throwing bones out, possibly for people to snag onto and commit these types of crimes on the dark web or other places? Remember, these 2 individuals didn't know each other. It has to be investigated, and I pray that the FBI is looking into it. They got to be looking into it and figure out who Red and 8 are. I'm not saying that Red and 8 are behind this, and I'm not saying they're not. It has to be looked into. Could this, again, in other words, still targeted because of the money that they would understand she would have, possibly have had access to Savannah? And that's about, you know, that's one avenue, an organized type ring that would be throwing out these bones. I need to be watching it all around the country. I look periodically, but I really need to do a deep dive, because this is how the Chilean crime ring started, that we're ripping off Mahomes, and we're ripping off, Kelsey, and many other sports figures and other figures. You know, you would think they'd have alarms. Well, they didn't set them. You'd think they'd lock the doors. Well, they didn't lock them. And these Chilean theft rings, and I talked all about this on Twitter a long time ago, and I did a show on them. You would think that these people, of all people, celebrities with all this money, would tighten down their houses, but they didn't, and they don't. And they knew that through their surveillance, their operations, probably inside information from maids and things. If it's similar to this case, I worked in Westlake. And so you look at all of that and you say, could this be that? You got to consider that. The other piece is, and Cheryl McCullough Mack, my buddy, is going to be on Monday, and I can't wait to talk to her. She's been out there. She came back. I can't wait to hear what she has to
That's
say.
good to hear. That's nice of
And
you.
I really, she believes that this was more targeted for very personal and horrible reasons, just to make this family suffer. Not really ever thinking they would get money, but that's why they went public, and that's why they sent the notes, and everything was just a masterful plan to, I'm going to say it, kill their mother, to attack them 3 days later with these notes that would cause them severe pain. And to
Okay, all
leave
right, we'll
this
change it.
like
Do you,
this for
do you want me to
personal
change it?
reason,
Because she is kind of
personal
putting me to
vendetta.
sleep. Do you want me to end this with just because I found Ashley Banfield? Should we see some Ashley Banfield or continue this? This is, I love Jennifer Coffendorfer, but she is putting me to sleep right now for some reason. I hate even saying that because I do try to refer people to her channel and support her. It's up to you guys. Do you want to continue this, or do you want to just see the Ashley Banfield and see if it's a new clip? It's totally up to you guys. Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's okay, yeah, because this is like without coffee. I mean, I love Jennifer Covenhofer, but I can't keep my eyes open. She'll probably kick my ass for streaming her, but we'll go for it. I don't even know if this is a new one. You guys got to tell me.
Exclusive content that I share with the members. And if you haven't subscribed yet, boink, boink, boink. It's free, it's easy, it's fun, and you do me a solid if you subscribe. Thank you so much. It's day 50 effing one.
Oh,
Nancy Guthrie
51, day
case. I have
51.
some
I don't
breaking
know if
news.
this is the
Spoken to a
latest
couple of my
one.
sources. I think I've
Wait.
told you a few times now that I've got a lot of friends in the FBI, local police, border patrol, sheriff's departments all around the country, and a couple of really solid sources in this Arizona story. And so, canvassing a few of my sources, I have discovered some.
So real quick, that's why I like also doing original content. So I was just at the NHL reporter's house who had the house fire. It wasn't arson. It was terrible. 3 young boys died, and she died while asleep. And I was able to get to her house. So I love doing like original content, and we try to do maps and go over Delphi and do stuff. So like sharing bigger name media people isn't the role of like what I foreseen on the channel. That's why I want to go to Tucson and be boots on the ground and be more in front of things instead of like just resharing Ashley Banfield. But this is good. If this is day 51, so I don't know if this is a new one. Let me just play this. I'll try to find the new one. I don't know. They're like hidden
something new in this case that is starting to make a lot of sense. The Guthrie family has told the local investigators who are working Nancy Guthrie's missing persons case that Nancy Guthrie frequently left her back doors open, unlocked, which now would make a lot more sense as to how this guy got in so easily, right? It's upsetting to know that, but it's helpful information for the police. You're going to find out why that changes the way you might look at a case, how you might investigate a bad guy, a source, or a suspect. It's interesting when you look at the possibilities of doors regularly being left open. The dynamic can actually change and the offender profile can actually change. I'm digging into that in this episode, but I'm also doing something in this episode that I think will help you to understand Mrs. Guthrie's home, because looking at it from the outside, it's kind of tricky. And I have thought all along that this very pretty little blue door at the back of her home was likely the back door that was left open. That has all been turned up on its end.
Thank you, Dina. Thank
based
you.
on my sources
Wait,
and
so
them
she's
telling
a new
me
one. Can
about
somebody?
this issue about the Guthrie's kids, the Guthrie kids telling the police
Hey, Alma,
that
thank you.
their mom
Good morning.
frequently, regularly left the back doors, plural, open.
Is this not the new one? Because I know it's day 51. It's not day 51. I don't know. They're talking about the back doors left open though. This has to be consistent with what Savannah Guthrie just said in her interview. I don't know if somebody could tell me. I keep looking. It's like so hard to
I
find.
have Gray Hughes from Gray Hughes
Oh
Investigates.
no,
who's
Gray
really
Hughes.
good
No
at
way,
doing
no way, no way,
3D
no way, no way.
imaging,
Shit.
working his way around crime scenes and
can't watch
figuring
Gray
out
Hughes.
outsides and insides. And he
Wait.
was masterful
Oh,
during the
no.
Idaho murders case at
Gray Hughes is
1122
the
King Road.
worst.
And he is going to be so incredibly
He
helpful
wants
in just a
everybody's
moment when
money
he
before he
joins
talks.
us to show you all of the different potential
Oh, no.
entry points to Nancy Guthrie's
Wait.
home. There are 5.
Is this the new one?
5 different entry points. And in the back, lest you think that there were multiple doors, there were 2.
Shit, not Gray Hughes.
And none of them were sliders. So I'm going to walk you all throughout the house and tell you.
Wait. Sorry. We can't do Gray Hughes. I just don't have I can't break my 401k and give Gray Hughes like all my money. So wait, just one second. Gray Hughes is going to put himself in prison, and then we'll have to pay him like $10,000 to get out in order for him to show us what he does on Google Maps. 1 second. Does anybody know where it's at? The new one? Oh wait, here. Okay, I think I found it. Thank God, not Gray Hughes. I'm sorry. And I respect anyone that, if you do like Gray Hughes, that's your preference. I remember following him a long time ago, and every 10 seconds, the guy's like, where's my $500? Where's my $10? Where's my, and to each his own, whatever. I'm not trying to limit the guy's success, but I'm I'm watching a guy just ask for money every 30 seconds. I'm not even know what I'm watching here. It was crazy. I mean, it really was. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to hurt his business or whatever. I just was like, I don't want to keep, I actually donated one time, and then I'm like, he keeps asking for more. I'm like, dude, I don't, what do you need here? I mean, God bless him, whatever, each his own.
Today in the Nancy Guthrie case, it's day, 54. Every time I see the numbers go up like this, I still can't believe how long this has been. But a lot has happened that I want to bring to you. Number one, Savannah Guthrie has spoken for the first time openly about a lot of details, not just about how this has affected her, how it's affected her family, but she's also released details about the investigation and what happened inside that house that we had not heard before. And some that actually confirmed things that I reported to you on day 3. So I'm going to play for you the information that Savannah has released in her interview on the Today Show with Hoda Kotb. And also, I've learned some information as well from my sources in the investigation about the progress,
not the pubes,
or lack thereof, specifics about that. And in a moment, you're also going to hear from an investigator who perhaps might be the leading authority on cases that are real difficult to solve. Like the case that he was
That's good,
instrumental in solving
Sapphire.
took up to 4 decades
That's hilarious
to solve. So Paul Holes, famous Costa Contra investigator, he is going to join me in just a moment and talk about when a case atrophies and how they draw down on the investigators, the staffing, the resources, and all the rest. Like, what's the actual metric they use to start pulling everything away? Because right now we know there's a task force, right? It used to be 400 investigators, right? Now we know it is task force, and it may be only a dozen or so. That's FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department investigators. So he's really, really knowledgeable about that, especially with the information that I just learned from my source about where this investigation stands now. So let me just get right to it with some of the news that Savannah Guthrie made when she did her interview on the Today Show this morning. And again, it is March 26th. It's Thursday. So Hoda got right to it and talked about how she learned that her mom was missing. Like, what what were the steps that she went through to find out what had happened and arrive down in Arizona and meet up with her siblings for the first time. And what you're about to hear is not only that information, but also listen very carefully in Savannah's answer, because she gives a detail about the back doors of the house. And I need to tell you that a couple days ago, I did an episode on information that I got from my sources, law enforcement sources, saying that the Guthrie kids had told the police that Mrs. Guthrie routinely left her back doors, plural, open, unlocked. And we did the best we could to look with every image we could at the back of Mrs. Guthrie's house, and we could only identify 2 back doors. But since that episode, Gray Hughes, who also helped me to identify this, was able to identify a 3rd door that you
Guys,
just
how do I
cannot
get rid of
see.
Gray Hughes?
It's a 3rd back door.
Please, is this like my biggest nightmare? Is this another episode where Ashley Banfield is talking about Gray Hughes, or does this go on without Gray Hughes? I'm not going to give the guy $20,000 right now to tell me a backdoor story about how like he draws like a little line waypoint and drops a map and says, all right, give me $15,000. Oh, okay, good. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. As long as Gray Hughes doesn't pop up, that's like my trigger warning where I start needing like massive amounts of Zoloft. I'm kidding, but I mean,
that actually goes into the kitchen.
I was just on Ashley Banfield's show yesterday.
Oh,
and
no.
A recording, and she put out a video, and we were
He's
discussing.
on here. Here, wait,
where
I have to
the
fast
doors
forward.
are,
I can't.
and
I'm sorry, guys.
She apparently. Take a look at this video
No,
right here.
no, please.
Everything okay?
Okay.
And she said, no. She said, Mom's
Oh,
missing.
shit.
And I said, what?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What are you talking about? She said, she's gone. And she was in a panic. I was in a panic. I'm like, call 911.
Yeah.
She's like, I did. We've called them. They're here. And we thought that she must have had like some kind of medical episode in the night, and that somehow, the paramedics had come because the back doors were propped open.
Oh my, what are you doing on here?
And that didn't make any sense. We thought maybe they came and there was a stretcher and they took her out the back.
Sorry about that.
But her phone was there and her purse was there and all her things. And it just didn't make any sense. So, Annie and Tommy had already called all the hospitals, but then I'm like, I'm going to call the hospital. So then I started calling the hospitals, and the police were there and talking to her at the same time. And it was just chaos and disbelief.
I was fascinated to hear that. On day 3 of this investigation, my source told me back door wide open. Now I've had 2 other law enforcement sources who've confirmed back door wide open. And here is Savannah saying back doors, plural, propped open. So just a very interesting piece, to the puzzle from Savannah herself. I also want to play for you now what Savannah said about the condition of her mom. We heard early on that the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nano, said that Mrs. Guthrie couldn't walk 50 yards without help. Well, Savannah got more specific about her mom's medical condition and her mobility. Have a listen.
I mean, from the very early moments, Annie and Tommy were saying this isn't that case that you are used to where someone wanders off. She can't wander off.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, she was in tremendous pain.
Yeah.
Her back was very bad. She was trying to, on a good day, she could walk down to the mailbox and get the mail, but most days not. So there was no wander off. And the doors were propped open.
Yeah.
And there was blood on the front doorstep. And the Ring camera had been yanked off.
Yeah.
And so we were saying, this is
do something.
This is not okay.
Yeah.
This isn't, something is very wrong here.
Yeah.
Did you hear that last bit that Savannah said, what she mentioned, that front doorbell cam had been yanked off? This is still a big mystery. My source on day 3 said the cameras had been smashed. I took that once we saw the empty bracket to mean maybe smashed off the mount, maybe something had been smashed off, because Fox had reported that there were glass fragments below that front doorbell mount. And then eventually the mount was seized and taken into evidence, but not for weeks. There is Savannah saying that it was yanked off. And every time I see that perpetrator going back to the garden and pulling up some of the weeds and then holding them in his fists and coming towards the camera, and then you can see his fists working with it, I keep thinking he's using it as a vine to get between the camera and the mount and yank the camera off, because you can't get your fingers between it. It's too narrow. The Nest Cam and the mount are too narrow. They're like the width of a quarter. So I wonder if Savannah thought that too, or saw different video than we saw, or more video than we saw. Who knows? But maybe she's come to that conclusion that that camera was yanked off. Just a very interesting detail at a time when there are so few details. Obviously, this is such a painful interview for Savannah. I think every day is just excruciating. And she's already mentioned that at night she wakes up every night and that it's excruciatingly painful. Savannah then talked about how, look, we've all asked the question, right? Why did this happen? Who took Mrs. Guthrie and why? Who wanted Nancy Guthrie and why? And many of us have wondered, is it because of her famous daughter, right? And early on, those ransom notes made us feel like this must have been why. You know, you're stealing her, and then you're sending this family ransom notes because maybe you know that Nancy Guthrie had a wealthy, famous daughter in television. And Savannah talks about that and about how she had a conversation with her brother about that. And she steps into the portion about what we've all wondered, like how much guilt must she have felt? I'm using that word, she's not, but you can see in her pain how she is struggling with this. Take a look.
I mean, my siblings are so amazing. My brother, you know, he spent his career in the military and worked in intelligence, and is a fighter pilot and is brilliant. And he saw very clearly right away what this was. Yeah. And even on the phone, when I called him, he knew. He knew. And he said, I think she's been kidnapped for ransom. And I said, yeah. What? Yeah. Well, why? What? And then, I mean, it sounds so like, how dumb could I be? But I didn't want to believe. I just said, do you think because of me? And he said, I'm sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe. But I knew that.
You did?
I hope not. I mean, we still don't know. Honestly, we don't know anything. No. We don't know anything. So I don't know that it's because she's my mom and somebody thought, oh, that girl, that lady has money, we can make a quick buck. I mean, that would make sense, but we don't know. But yeah, that's probably, which is too much to bear. To think that I brought this to her bedside, that it's because of me. And I just say, I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to my sister and my brother and my kids and my nephew and Tommy and my brother-in-law. I'm like, so sorry. I'm so sorry. If it is me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
One other detail that Savannah released today was in furtherance to what she mentioned in one of her Instagram posts, which was, my mom was taken from her bed in the dark of night. Now she's going further and giving details about what her mom was wearing when she was taken from that home. Take a listen.
How is it possible that we are having to make a video speaking to a kidnapper who took an 84-year-old woman in the dead of night in her pajamas with no shoes, without her medicine. This little person. And to beg for mercy.
That's new. Pajamas and no shoes. That is new information, because I think about Mrs. Guthrie being taken, if she was walking that stone path off of her front entrance, her tiled front entrance outside her front door, that would not be the kind of thing you'd want to walk on with bare feet without shoes. So it's painful to think about, you know, an 84-year-old woman being forced to walk over those stones without her shoes, or God forbid, being carried for whatever reason. But that is a detail we didn't know until now. And Savannah spoke specifically about the whole ransom piece, because we're well into the end of week 8 right now, you know, and many of us have sort of felt as though the ransom piece has fallen away. There hasn't been any mention of it. The alleged ransom seekers never gave proof of life, never gave a second communication to say, okay, well, this deadline is passed now. We'll give you a proof of life or a photo. And that's all that Savannah and her siblings asked for, right? If you're real, you have to tell us that you're real, and you have to give us proof that you have my mother. And so she speaks to the ransom piece, because while we may have all moved on from it, it doesn't feel like Savannah has.
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came. And I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real. And I didn't see them. But, you know, a person that would send a fake ransom note really has to look deeply at themselves.
Yeah.
To a family in pain. But I believe.
Yep, I can.
The 2 notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Really?
We've talked on this podcast, and many other people's podcasts have spoken about this, is when we got the ring cam video from the FBI showing that masked intruder at the front door. It was absolutely terrifying. I remember the day. I remember someone saying, my God, it looks like a scene out of the movie Fargo. It's so scary, just this terrifying masked man. And then we went further to imagine, once we learned from Savannah that her mom had been taken from her bed, what must that have been like? The fear that you can't even imagine opening your eyes and seeing that when you're in your safest space, right? Not only in your home, but in your bed. And Savannah addressed that directly.
I mean, it's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
It's just totally terrifying.
Sword in that sword.
And I can't imagine that is who she saw standing over her bed.
Yeah.
I can't.
She was like best friends with her mom, too.
Savannah made note about what could only be sort of thought of as the upside to at least having that video, right? We've got a suspect, at least some details, right? Some forensic details, something to put out to the public to get tips. That's a huge upside. But there was the other one where she said, you know, early on, I had a source in the police who said that the investigators were focusing on her brother-in-law, right? And they towed her sister's car. They searched her sister's house. They photographed at night. They canvassed her sister's neighbor. And so a lot of the press went over to her sister and her brother-in-law's home. The investigation has to do that. Every investigation has to do that, right? But that was very difficult for Savannah. And she made a mention of how this image at least tamped down a lot of the speculation about her family. Have a listen.
And I'm glad and grateful to the investigators and the technology companies that were able to find that video. To, I hope,
That's good point, Rebecca.
people of good heart and compassion, stop the irresponsible and cruel
No,
speculation
so terrible.
that had started to swirl.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
I'm glad that people saw
Yeah.
what came to our door.
When you talk about the cruel speculation, the whispers, the innuendo that it was somebody in your family, how did you weather that?
It's unbearable.
Yeah.
And it piles pain upon pain. There are no words. There are no words. I don't understand. I'll never understand. And no one took better care of my mom than my sister and brother-in-law. And no one protected my mom more than my brother.
Obviously, Savannah is a woman of faith, and she has made, many mentions of how her faith has been helping her. She's mentioned it in her Instagram posts. She has asked God for help. She has written a book about how faith has guided her in life. And she also told Hoda that the goodness and kindness of God is remarkable and an equal measure to my sorrow, meaning that balance of how horrible it's been and how wonderful God has been to her in all of this and helping get her through it. And to that end, Savannah also mentioned that God has spoken to her in all of this. And what she said really is profound in how Savannah has been processing this. Take a listen.
As I said to myself, I can handle anything, God. I can handle anything. I just can't handle not knowing. We can't handle not knowing.
Yeah.
I have to know. And I heard a voice. And it said, you do know where she is. She's with me. She's with me.
Yeah, right, Jansen.
So whether she is on this earth still, or whether she is in heaven, I know where she is. I know who she's with. But we need to know.
Oh,
Savannah also spoke about the home, the family.
oh, I just wanted to say, if you ever seen younger photos of Nancy, she was such a pretty lady. And there's photos of when Savannah's a little baby, like she was like 2 or 3 standing next to her. And Nancy was such an attractive lady herself. It just breaks my heart. It's horrible.
Home. And if you didn't already know this was where she and her siblings grew up. She even talked about how when she was 16 years old, she came home and her mom and her sister Annie were on the couch crying because they were about to tell her that her father had just died suddenly. Just an earth-shattering moment in the Guthrie family. Something that she said actually helped her mother prepare Savannah and her 2 siblings for difficulties in life. Obviously, this one being the most difficult. But here's how she talks about this Tucson home, their family home, and how special it was to her mom.
My mom loved and treasured that house. In good years and lean years, they were able to hold on to that house. That's my mom's.
It would take an 84-year-old lady.
That's really hard
I'd beat it.
to see that
Sorry. Oh, God.
violated
Horrible human being.
and the terror that she must have felt is unbearable. It's unbearable.
Hoda also asked Savannah about the decision to finally get on a plane and go back home to New York. I mean, imagine yourself for a moment. You've been living this nightmare for weeks and weeks on end. in a temporary residence with your siblings with no answers, total confusion and terror, missing your mom, wondering, and your mind would race to the worst things. And eventually you have these children and a life and a family and a job and everything back up in New York that you're going to have to return to. But that decision of when and how hard that decision must have been. But here's how that part of the conversation went.
I looked out the window of the airplane and just thought, where are you?
Yeah.
Ugh.
That desert, that beautiful desert that she loves. Where are you? How could I leave you?
One of the difficult things Savannah mentioned was that she moved houses many times. We hadn't known that either. We knew that originally she'd been staying at her sister's home and then moved to a very private and secluded place, but we didn't know that she had moved many times. And then Hoda asked her a very specific question about how she thinks the investigation is going. Because I read a comment earlier underneath in the podcast, one of the podcasts I'd released, and someone said, have you noticed that there's been no mention about the sheriff and the work that the sheriff's doing? And I started to wonder, I wonder how Savannah feels about that. And Hoda asked her directly.
Well, it's still going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people have worked tirelessly. And we see that.
Mm-hmm.
But we need answers. We cannot be at peace without knowing. And someone can do the right thing.
She definitely needs answers. More than any of us, Savannah and her family need these answers. But are they going to get them? And when? How long? And so this is the key, right? As we move forward and we watch what's happening with the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI and the task force that they've assembled, which is small, hell of a lot smaller than the 400 investigators several weeks ago. Now we're down to maybe a dozen or so, maybe 5 or 6 from the Pima County Sheriff's Department who now work in the Tucson field office of the FBI with, I don't know, a handful. They haven't given us the numbers, but it's the Tucson field office. It's not the Phoenix one. Many of the agents returned back to the field office in Phoenix. So the atrophying of a case is real. It's a thing. It is the natural order of things in an investigation because crimes continue and other crimes need investigating. And to that end, a source in the investigation has said, and this is a direct quote when asked, where does the investigation stand? The direct quote is, "We ain't got shit." That's one of the investigators in the investigation. We
Oh my God.
ain't
Zoe,
got
please, you
shit.
didn't have to do that.
And it is hard to hear that.
Thank you, Zoe. Please, you did not have to do that. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That was very sweet of you. You did not have to do that, but thank you. I really appreciate that.
Because all the while I have imagined that they've got really strong leads that they are pursuing, that they're close to getting, right? Like Koberger. We did not know they were following him across the country, that they pulled his father's garbage, and that they were parked outside his door, and that they were grabbing him until they grabbed him. Like, we didn't know all that was happening under the surface of the water where the ducks paddle under the water feverishly, but it's calm up above and you don't know. We did not know that. And I assumed that was happening in this case. I assumed that there's something happening with this task force, that they're getting closer. But then to hear that, we ain't got shit, that dashed a lot of my optimism for now, because I know there are ebbs and flows. There are ebbs and flows, and I know that because I talk to people like Paul Holes. Paul is a former cold case investigator for the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office, and he is well known across this country, around the world, for his work solving the Golden State Killer case. Took upwards of 3 to 4 decades to catch that killer, but they did it, right? That trail went cold for weeks, then months, then years, then decades.
Yeah, it's
He's
true.
the guy who was instrumental in helping to bring that case to an end and finding that person and putting him away, despite the fact he was in his 70s. So I called him about the "we ain't got shit" comment right? Should I be optimistic? Should I be dashed about this investigation at week 8? And he's got some really interesting things to say about that. So you're going to hear his perspective on A, what it means, B, where it's going, C, how things draw down in the natural order of investigations as life continues and other crimes continue and the taxpayers need resources elsewhere, how things shrink when they expand, how they shrink again. So he's going to tell you about that in reference to the Guthrie investigation. But also, I asked him a few other things about my source and the information I learned earlier this week, which was that
William, holy
blood
cow,
patterns
another person.
outside the front door, which is on the entranceway of her home, outside her front door, the blood spatter pattern that goes down the front walkway, how my source said it is replicated inside the home, right over the threshold and into the front entrance, hallway, foyer, however you describe the front entrance of someone's home as you get inside, that those blood droplet patterns are identical right there. I've learned where in the house that blood was, and it's right inside the front entrance of the home, the foyer, the hallway, whatever it is, but nowhere else. It starts there at that front entrance inside. It goes over the threshold and outside onto the outdoor patio tiles and then down the walkway. So I asked Paul about that because it turns out Paul is also a blood spatter expert. So he's going to weigh in on that. Then I also asked Paul before Savannah spoke about Savannah's words were the back doors were propped open. She said it twice. Was she being colloquial with propped? Because 3 different law enforcement investigators and sources of mine have said back door wide open. There are 3. I know I said 2 in another podcast. We have since discovered a door you can't see in any of the pictures or video, but it's a door that goes into the kitchen sideways to the house. If you're looking from the backyard at the back of the house, it's a perpendicular door, so you cannot see it unless you were to look over at it, but it enters into the back patio where the patio furniture is in the backyard. And there are 3 doors. And she said back doors propped open. Did she mean left open or propped with something? And plural. She said it twice and said the plural doors twice. It was very interesting. I asked Paul Holes about this news that I had broken earlier this week, that the back doors had regularly been left unlocked by Mrs. Guthrie. This was just sort of a habit. She didn't always lock those back doors, plural. And I asked Paul to weigh in on that as well in terms of a victimology and, suspectology, if there is such a thing, how they factor that information into the investigation. With all that, here's my conversation with Paul Holes. Hey, quick note from my sponsor. I want you to do an experiment. The next time you're in your kitchen, do me a favor, go grab a box of...
Sometimes can resolve.
Oh, no way, Paul Holes.
Sometimes can take weeks.
Okay, so this is Paul Holes. If you don't know who Paul Holes is, Paul Holes literally was like the GQ Man of the Year who caught the Golden State Killer, rang the doorbell and got his ass. And then he was like, this is about, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. He was like the heartthrob of the true crime community. He blew up like crazy. If you remember Paul Holes, Paul Holes, I'm sorry. But this guy was like getting so famous because he caught the Golden State Killer. And then he was like the ladies' man all over the magazines. And he I don't know, he's just such a sincere guy because he didn't know how to handle that. And he was just like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was going to be the biggest sensation in true crime at that moment. This guy's a great human being.
Sometimes can take years. So just because you have an inside source saying we ain't got shit right now after 7 weeks?
We're into 8. Yeah.
8 weeks. This is not atypical for this type of case for a variety of reasons, because, sometimes comprehensive forensic testing can take months. You may be following various investigative leads that dead end, and then you have to back up and then go down different paths. Sometimes it's a matter of the right tip hasn't come in. So right now, even though we have this situation Nancy Guthrie, there's an exigency because the hope is she's still alive, and you want to get that information, those investigative leads that will get her home safe. But the reality is that in these whodunit cases, it can take a long time if the offender is actually doing things to try to prevent himself from being caught. And I believe that's what's happening in this case.
You know, it just makes me think, have you ever heard of a case, seen a case, read about a case where an offender steals an old woman to keep the old woman for weeks or months? Have you ever seen it happen for any reason and never asked for anything back? Like never asked for money or some kind of connection with the family? Just I had no ulterior motive.
No, we've talked before about this case. The offender, he communicated with the media that he abducted Nancy for ransom. This was his communication. He is controlling the narrative. I want money. However, when I take a look at the circumstances, and I still stand by this opinion, when I see him in that costume, on the front porch, I'm looking at that going, that does not look right at all. He wants to be seen. He's misdirecting. So, he is trying to lead the investigation down a certain path. And then I'm looking at it going, you know what? Don't look at this as an abduction ransom case. I think he possibly had some personal connection to Nancy, and he went to the house to harm her. And so when I hear, an inside source that you've developed that we don't have anything on this case, so it's like, okay, so what was the assumption? Let's back up. You guys may have followed a certain investigative path, a certain forensic path, and it hasn't panned out after almost 8 weeks. Let's, resettle, let's reevaluate and start looking at other possibilities where this offender actually has some level of connection to the family, to Nancy. I can't tell you where that would be, but he has targeted Nancy for a reason.
But it sounds to me like you're talking about him being a mastermind. Like, I'm going to cosplay and misdirect and then take her and then send fake ransom notes to TMZ and the local media. Like, that's not a real ransom, seeker. They don't go to the media. They say, don't go to the media. Don't go to the police. So aren't you ascribing a lot more to this guy than maybe what he might be capable of?
Well, but that's also part of what I'm evaluating is, okay, he's going to the media with the ransom. Why is he doing that? Because that complicates his life. That just makes it harder for him to get what he is saying his goal is, which is the financial, assets. All this media attention is not making his life any easier. Him posing in front of the front porch camera is not making his life any issue. He's doing this on purpose. So that's where I'm thinking you have to take a look at the possibility that his primary goal was to cause harm to Nancy. And why is he doing that? And I think there's, 2 paths that I would look at. You have the celebrity status of Savannah Guthrie. Then you have maybe a personal interaction that he's had with Nancy. And then he's recognizing, there might be some financial resources that I can potentially exploit in order to misdirect law enforcement. So this is where I think instead of looking at this as an abduction ransom case.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry.
I mean, my personal opinion is that this is very possibly a straight up homicide case. And now he's staging it, making it look like, utilizing the media. And when you say, well, is he some sort of criminal mastermind? It's not necessarily being a criminal mastermind. You are now dealing with what I would say is a sophisticated and intelligent offender that is trying to commit a crime that he wants to commit, but also have self-preservation. He doesn't want to be caught. So he's, I would say, a more intelligent offender. And we run across these guys consistently. We have dumb offenders. They don't do this level of thing. He at least has a level of intelligence to think things through. Now, criminal mastermind, the posing in front of the front porch camera in that costume, I'd go, oh no, he's not a criminal mastermind, but he at least has a level of sophistication to know how to manipulate the investigation and how to manipulate the media.
Well, who knows what the investigators are doing in the background? All we can say is that at one point within the last 7.5 weeks, they had 400 people working this case. And now, as we go into month 2, we know there's a task force. It has a half dozen or less homicide members from Pima County, and then an unknown number from the FBI, all of them in the Tucson field office. The rest of the FBI have pulled back to the Phoenix FBI field office. And so that tells me that it ain't 400, right?
Right.
But now what happens? Like when you hear we ain't got shit, when does the investigation atrophy further? How does it atrophy further? When does it go down to we have one guy who watches it every other day, or when a lead comes in?
That's actually very hard to predict, especially with such a high profile case. The Pima County Sheriff's Office is going to have limited resources. I don't know exactly what size that sheriff's office is, but they can only do so much, and they're going to have other active cases coming in which these investigators are going to have to be pulled off the Guthrie case in order to handle, because they're going to have active public safety things that they need to be dealing with. The FBI has amazing manpower, amazing resources. However, the FBI, they don't investigate homicide cases on a routine basis. That's why it's always best to
But we don't know. We don't know if it's homicide.
True. And I'm not saying it's a homicide, but I would be treating this on a resource level as a homicide. You have to. At this point, 84-year-old victim who's been gone for 8 weeks, he's no longer asking for anything. Is he taking the time to keep her alive?
If honestly, I have to just jump in because I keep saying this over and over. If he was ever asking for anything in the beginning, because in my opinion, that ransom was just a bad actor from overseas trying to scam a victimized family. I never believed that the ransom, all the different iterations of ransom seeking, had anything to do with the actual crime other than someone trying to profit off it.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree with you with what I know about the case is that, I don't think this is an abduction ransom case, unfortunately. So this is where...
What would be the purpose of a homicide, though? An 84-year-old woman with no demands, with nothing, no sort of, no letter to say, I gotcha. It just doesn't seem to be any reason. What would you see as a purpose for a homicide if it's a homicide?
There's so many motives, fundamentally, when you take a look at it, and as far as I know, there isn't any indication that he stole anything out of the house. So this isn't like a burglary for property theft that went sideways. So now I think it's more a personal interaction. He had a vendetta against Nancy. Or they're, and I don't want to put too much weight on this, but you also have to consider, and I've worked these types of cases.
The Summer of Sam, oof, man, that's a freaky thing. but now he actually like found God and he like just changed his life, which I think he's sincerely, because he's been in prison so long. But man, that was a scary summer.
We do have women this age that are sexually assaulted and killed. So, there's that possibility. However, the offender potential by removing her out of the house, that elevates his risk because now he has a victim inside his vehicle. So why is he doing that? You always have to consider, why is the offender doing an action or a behavior
Good point, Eris.
that
Yep, that's a good
causes
point.
his
Yeah.
risk to be
There's a
elevated?
lot of other people involved.
Well, if it is that, and I am
That's a
with
good
you,
point.
we have talked about geriatric rape on this program. It's a thing, and it's hard to believe. People need to understand it is real. It
Very
does
much.
happen, and I've said it before. The statistic that was given to me by a prominent homicide prosecutor in California said that the percentage of perpetrators of geriatric rape in their 20s, it's 92%. 92% of the geriatric rapists are in their 20s. So it is a thing. But I think when you said he elevates his risk by taking her out of the house, I think he mitigates his risk because, rape is a very, very hard thing to keep your DNA from showing up.
Well, and maybe he recognized that after he committed the crime,
Or knew it in advance.
Yeah. So, so it all depends on the dynamics of the violence that occurred. So if he recognized that, oh, I've left my DNA behind, I need to remove the source of the DNA, and that's removing Nancy's
away from
body out of the
Spain.
house.
That's awesome.
Then yes, he is taking a step to, in his mind, lower the risk. But
Right.
now he has a victim in his vehicle, which he could absolutely be pulled over in the middle of the night, right? There's aspects that where I'm looking at it going, okay, there's a possibility that you now are trying to do something that you think is self-preservation. However, you are elevating your risk. And that's where I just get back to that question of why is he doing that? And it may go
Right.
back to your question, is he's now recognizing he's left objective identifying DNA evidence on or in Nancy's body, and now he has to take her with him. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. But
One thing I didn't think of, and I don't know why I didn't think of it now, because so often the conversations we've had, it's elevating your risk if you take a victim and put that victim in your car. Now your car is going to be invested. What if it was a stolen car overnight? What if he stole a car overnight, did this dastardly thing, and eventually got rid of Nancy's body and then put that car back that next morning or in a day? And no one knows, no one's the wiser.
it's possible. I've got cases in which offenders have stolen vehicles, they switch license plates, they did their crime, then they switch license plates back, and then they dump the car, and sometimes these
Tasha
cars
was
are
like,
set
yeah,
on
I'm
fire.
Gucci. I don't know.
Sometimes I
I was
have
ordering
one
a
car
drink.
end
I'm
up
like,
in
I'm Gucci.
Tijuana.
What's best for a person
it's
that's
so,
Gucci? And then they
that is a
they just ordered
possibility,
me
but
what
that
they thought
also
was
is
Gucci.
informative about the criminal history of the offender. Typically, this isn't your novice criminal offender. If he's doing that, he understands the system and then knows how to get rid of something like a stolen vehicle.
Let me tell you, my street was burglarized. All the cars on my street was burglarized. And it turns out the vehicle with the kids in it was stolen. So the dumb kids even knew enough to steal a car to commit their crimes. And it makes me think, if anyone's watching right now, if you happen to be in the Tucson area, if you remember something weird about your vehicle, it was parked in a different place the next morning on February 1st, or, something was odd. There was dirt on it you didn't recognize. And you can't get past what the heck happened. And you think your friend took it and you can't get over that your friend won't admit it. It might be worth calling the police. It might be worth calling 1-800-FBI because, it's entirely possible this guy stole a car, did his crimes, put that car back, and he's walking free.
No, absolutely. And I would say if you have something like that you remember, open up the trunk of your car or the back seat and shine a flashlight and see if you can see some dark stains, because Nancy's bleeding, and it's possible she bled in this vehicle she was transported in. And if the vehicle has darker fabric, that blood is not going to be very readily visible. I've experienced that myself. So you have to really look.
So, as an investigator, if there's somebody watching right now who thinks, geez, you know what? I couldn't figure out what the hell went on February 1st. I had that weird thing happen. My vehicle was parked different. And I assumed my wife did it, but then she said she didn't. And I figured she was playing prank, whatever it is. What exposure does somebody have if they call the Pima County Sheriff's Department or 1-800-FBI? That's the one I recommend. Now, do they need a lawyer? Because if their car is processed and Nancy's blood is in it, and they're the ones that came forward, what exposure do they have? What kind of protection do they need?
It usually becomes very obvious very early on. You think about this. What offender in this case is going to call up law enforcement and say, "Hey,
it's a nice cover." It's a nice cover.
But you know what? It's not a difficult thing to resolve. Typically, with innocent people, you are doing the right thing by coming forward and saying, "Hey, I recognize this. I heard details, on Ashley Banfield's show, and I thought, hey, you know what? I think, maybe there's something going on here." And you will be interviewed for sure. And law enforcement is going to kind of take a look at your background and where you were at and everything else and stuff. But, if you're truly innocent, that's not going to be a factor at all. I mean, you'll be very easily cleared.
You hope. Yeah. I mean, we've certainly had innocent people put away, but you're right.
Sure.
What kind of a guilty person's going to call up and say, "Oh, hey," but it is a cover.
Well, and not this guy. I mean, look at what he's doing now. I mean, he, put out there, maybe he's the one that communicated. Maybe it's like what you said. Somebody else online took advantage of the situation. This guy doesn't want to get caught. He doesn't want to get, any law enforcement attention. And if he were to call law enforcement under some sort of ruse as being an innocent person, it's going to be pretty easy to sort him out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many electronic alibis now as well. Not just if you live alone and you were sleeping that night, your watch will tell everybody whether you were sleeping, your phone, your front door, did it open, did it close? I mean, there's all sorts of things that can, and the video on your street that can see so much. Let me ask you, I mean, I feel like I've almost exhausted the question that I can't get out of my mind. And that is this investigator saying we ain't got shit. I was so sad when I heard that, because I'm not kidding, Paul. I really did believe that there's, I keep calling it the duck theory. There's this calm little duck floating on the surface of the water and nothing's happening. And then down below, their little paddles are going like mad and we can't see it. I assumed that was this investigation. And actually, I asked my husband about it over dinner and he said, wait, there aren't 400 officers or 400 people working on that case anymore? I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize it's atrophied down to a small task force. And it will get smaller. It's just how and when do they make those decisions? What makes those decisions for them?
Well, there's a lot of factors. Of course, primarily it comes down to each agency, what their level of resources are, how many cases they're having to handle. If you're talking about a sheriff's office, the sheriff has, public safety needs that he needs to meet, and at a certain point, if the case is kind of dwindling, then he's going to have to reallocate those resources to handle, other cases that are coming up, and then the feds have the same issue, just in a different capacity, but what I will say is that, this case is going to have legs for sure. And there will be resources dedicated to it.
But what kind? Like how many, what sort? And for how long?
Well, in terms of how long, I can't speak to that because it depends on what happens. Let's say we have, a major, terrorist action because the Iran war is going on. the FBI is going to be pulled off of this case in order
I see.
to address that.
Yeah.
So at this point, I
That
would say,
natural order of law enforcement is what you're saying, is that,
yeah.
there are other things happening that need our attention and our tax dollars as well.
Well, and that's where, I spent so much time working cold cases, and, many of these cases went cold is because law enforcement resources got directed to current cases. That's just it. There's always more cases that are coming in. And then after a case goes so long, and like with this particular case, there's going to be an assessment. Okay, what's the public safety threat? Do we have a serial rapist? Do we have a serial killer? Do we have a bank robber that's going in and killing people on a weekly basis? That's probably not what this case is. And so as time goes on, law enforcement authorities are going to go, okay, this was a one-off. It's not an active public safety threat. We want to solve it. However, resources have to be going to the current state in our jurisdiction to keep the public safe. And that's just the nature of law enforcement. And I know it's frustrating to hear. It's frustrating for me as a cold case investigator going, can't we do something on these older cases? But the reality is law enforcement is there for the current situation of keeping the public safe, first and foremost. And then you go to the cases that now have some age to them. With Nancy Guthrie's case, the big question mark is she still alive or not? And that's where you still will have resources dedicated with the hope that she's still alive.
Well, and I gotta say, this may sound crazy, but the podcasters come in as well. There's plenty of podcasters out there who have actually really crowdsourced a lot of leads and details and solutions. Gabby Petito was found because of a podcaster. I think the Elgin, Illinois Police Department, they put out the podcast, I think it's called Somebody Knows Something, and they were able to find the car of a long missing woman who was dead under, a river, at the bottom of a river. So there are alternate means to continue the heat, so to speak. But being on your side of law enforcement and knowing that there's people like me on the other side here just looking for the information, doesn't it make sense to keep feeding the media so that they will keep the story alive and keep the tips coming in?
There most certainly is a strategy that law enforcement can continue to employ. And one of the criticisms that I have with law enforcement is they have a tendency to circle the bandwagon, right? We're not going to interact with media. And very early on in a case, that's appropriate. You have to keep details about the case out of the public domain because those details may be what is needed in order to be able to successfully solve and prosecute the case. But as the case ages and as, understanding the circumstances, more experienced investigators and agencies start understanding we need to make sure that we can continue to keep the media and the public informed because there may be a solution as we provide more details. Unfortunately, there's so many agencies that literally put their head in the sand and never communicate any more details of the case because they just don't have the experience to evaluate how to, I'd call it a seesaw. It's sort of like as time goes on, you need to be able to feed more details. And this is where I would say with this particular case, that seesaw is faster. You need to start feeding more details to the public because you have the public's attention. You have the exigency if Nancy's still alive in order to see if you can't generate more tips. And of course, we now have this phenomena of the online sleuths. And I probably have the most experience of anybody with the online sleuthing community because I work Zodiac and I work Golden State Killer, and I was hammered by both, groups, and there's a lot of overlap with them. And there's individuals that have great skill sets that law enforcement doesn't have, then there's individuals that have great intentions and they provide decent information. But then you have a bunch that are just killing us in terms of, misinformation and bad leads that we need to follow up on. So it's very much a pro and con thing with the online sleuthing thing. With the Guthrie case, this is, the issue is going to be is that law enforcement hasn't released a lot of information. So the online sleuths don't have the facts in order to be able to actually go after something that has a nexus to the case.
You're right. And then when Sheriff Nanos does release something, he retracts it. And then it's actually, it's actually discovered to be erroneous because people in the community say that actually didn't happen when he said it did happen. It's just been a big hot mess.
Well, and I will say, this is where, when you have elected sheriffs, I mean, they are way up on the ladder rung, right? So what ends up happening is the information that they get are coming from detective sergeants that go to a lieutenant, that go to a captain, that go to a commander or assistant sheriff, finally to the sheriff. So now you have the whole telephone game going on. And now he's putting out information as he has been told, and it's already been altered by the time he's hearing it. I've seen that time and time again.
That's interesting. So do PIOs go to the base level and get what they need and skip the whole telephone chain?
PIOs usually speak in terms which they are able to provide
Obfuscate.
information, but it's not where somebody can go, oh, no, you're wrong here. PIOs are very, very good at least providing information that the media is going, okay, we're good, without getting down into the details where now people are fact checking them.
Right. And they do obfuscate. And I know they have
sure.
a hard job. I've worked
Yeah.
with them for 38 years. So, okay. So it's obvious that the natural order of things will show that this task force will get smaller eventually, that those who are assigned to the case will be reassigned. And eventually, this case might have one or two or three, or even just one person on it, which is hard for everybody who's so invested in this, particularly the Guthrie family.
Yeah.
That's hard for them to realize, but it's like you said, it's the natural order. Talk to me a little bit about the other news that my source told me this week. A couple things. First and foremost, that the family has told the police that Nancy Guthrie rarely locked her back.
Oh, sorry, freedom fighter. I thought I was live. We were actually talking about somebody with the church, within her church group. That's a smart take.
Doors. And I want to make a correction. I said this earlier, but I want to make a correction. She has 3 back doors. 2 of them are visible with the drone shots that have gone around the back of the house. One of them is not visible because it's vertical. It's perpendicular to the picture, so you can't see it. But there is a 3rd back door. So now knowing there's 3 back doors, that Nancy Guthrie apparently rarely locked her back doors. How does that, in your opinion, affect the way investigators go about this case, knowing that this perpetrator got in somehow?
Well, obviously, unlocked doors are an easy thing for offenders to be able to go through, and we see it commonly with serial burglars, serial rapists. They literally will walk through neighborhoods and just randomly start checking doors, going from house to house. And the house that has an unlocked door, they go in.
On that exact visit, or will they check and then note it for later?
It depends. It really depends on the offender. Well, we have offenders that will just go in, and victimize.
So
and
it's the randomness of whoever on that block left the door open, no matter whether there's 7 people in the house or one person living there.
Absolutely. This is Sacramento.
Man, that's high risk.
It is, but this is where, you are dealing with offenders that are willing to do this, and sometimes it's a simple neighborhood burglar who's only interested in property crime. And he's just going around and he's checking front doors, or he's checking the rear slider. And then when he finds something, he goes in.
Yeah,
There's
so
a
true.
dog barking inside. He moves on to the next house
Nano's
because he
version.
has 100 houses that he can go into. So, you know, when you start talking about Nancy's victimology, about leaving these rear doors open, you know, if this offender targeted Nancy, it's possible ahead of time he started doing surveillance, he started doing security checks, he started trying to figure out, you know, how I can easily get into the house. The easier they can get in the house, the better it is for
There's
the
that green
offender.
door too.
Now, if
Look
I
at that. Wow, they can just
remember right from a previous conversation we had, I think there were multiple security cameras throughout the property that had been smashed, right?
Well, my source told me early on, plural, nest cams smashed. And then we learned later on they were nest cams. We also learned later on that the front nest cam was off its mount and gone. And Michael Ruiz from Fox News Digital said that there were glass shards seen underneath, or glass fragments seen underneath the camera mount. And we saw spotlights in the back that clearly had been smashed and were dangling. So I can't tell you if multiple cameras had been smashed. A source said it. We saw at least spotlights smashed, and we saw one camera at the front smashed or taken or whatever off its mount, and others that had been left by the perpetrator and by the cops.
Well, and so
I can see
okay,
that, Tasha, for
let's,
sure.
let's make the assumption.
That's a smart
Nancy
take.
had multiple cameras distributed throughout the
Lipstick,
property.
please lock your doors. Please.
Multiple cameras were smashed. You have multiple points of entry.
Oh, one other thing. When everybody's jogging or going to get the mail or doing things, switch it up. Go for walk your dogs. I mean, I know I'm stating pretty obvious here, but don't do those same running trails. Don't do the same spots. Always mix it up. And just know, you know, everyone has a Nest camera, Ring camera. You know, neighbors are friendly, but everybody's watching everybody outside. Just keep that in mind.
With these doors that were unlocked in the back side or the side parts of this house. And I know it's somewhat of a complex layout with this house. The offender is taking an action to prevent being seen with these other cameras. And yet he walks up to her front porch and pretends like, oh, there's a camera here. What am I going to do with this camera? I'll get some, you know, shrubs and try to cover it up. I mean, for me, it just is so telling and so obvious.
True.
That the offender wanted to be seen on that front porch wearing that costume. This is staging. He took all the other steps needed to obscure how he got into the house, how he possibly got out of the house, maybe, you know, by smashing these other cameras. He has knowledge about this property.
Perfect. I'm glad. Okay.
That's where that video surveillance of him on the front porch is so compelling to
Happy
me
birthday, Disco.
and tells me he is sitting here trying to make this crime look like something that it is not. And it's, oh, I'm the bad guy here with a gun and I'm going in to abduct Nancy and ask for ransom. Well, no, that wasn't his true intent. He went in there to hurt Nancy.
Do you think it's possible that this guy had worked in that backyard once, twice, many times before, saw the pattern that those doors don't get locked every time she goes in and out of them, and returned that night, but decided to do the camera in the front end so that he could take her out that way and you never saw his car leave? It's less about trying not to be on camera. It's more about making sure his car, once he takes her out that front door and loads her in the car, isn't seen on camera.
That's a possibility for the camera, but I think you're spot on. And this is what I've been saying from the very beginning is, you know what, this guy, if I'm right and he is staging this crime, you know, you have to go back possibly 2 years. Who are the delivery drivers? Who work for UPS, FedEx? Who are the mailmen? Who were the contractors that did work in Nancy's house? Who were the landscapers that did work on her property or whatever? You
Electricians, heating, cooling. I mean, there's untold number of servicemen that come and work on a single older woman's home.
And I don't know what Nancy's house is like on the inside. I have a case in which some gangbangers were working for a delivery service. They went in and delivered a lamp in a upper end neighborhood, and they saw all the nice stuff inside that house. And a week later, they came back, and ultimately the husband, the homeowner, was killed as he was trying to save his wife.
Good. I'm glad. Good for the dog.
You
Good.
don't know who you're letting into your house, and that's where I'm looking at this, going, okay, if he is misdirecting this, if he's recognizing, oh, this family has, well, he may not even know anything about Savannah Guthrie. He may just have been in Nancy's house going, oh, wow, there's a lot of nice stuff in here. They got assets, but decided that
That's a
she
good
was
point.
going to be a
Good
victim
point.
because she fit
It's a real good point.
something. Either she, had a negative interaction with him, maybe bad words back and forth, or, he saw her and she fit what his sexual fantasies were. And he's going, I'm going to go back there, but I know I can, have law enforcement go down the wrong path because they have money. And so I'm going to say, I want a ransom. I'm going to remove her from the house and have a ransom. That is a distinct possibility. And that's where, if I were being pulled into this case, now at this point, I'm going to go, how much have you guys considered this
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
possibility?
Yeah.
Or have you looked at it as strictly an abduction ransom case?
Tasha said they
If
probably
the
know
Pima County
Savannah seen
Sheriff's
the footage of the
Department were
FBI
to
video.
reach out to
Yeah.
someone like you, with your skills, and you, for heaven's sake, you caught
True.
a
True.
Golden
That's a good
State
point.
Killer
Good point.
after decades, would you go?
Oh, absolutely. This is the type of case that's in my wheelhouse. I understand this type of offender. I would want to get all the information so I could evaluate the offender's actions, the offender's behaviors, the forensic evidence, and maybe be able to provide some insight. I can never say that I'm going to come into a case and solve the case. I am entirely confident I can come into a case and advance the case.
You feel like you could
Smart
help?
guy.
I absolutely feel I could help, for sure.
Might you offer your assistance, Paul, or do you want to just sort of wait to see if it's needed?
The funny thing is now that I'm retired, law enforcement sees me as media. So me just calling up and saying, hey, do you want my help? Law enforcement doesn't accept help from media. So somebody would need to recognize that I could contribute versus me just doing a cold call.
Well, I hope the sheriff starts reaching out soon, because I
Yeah,
get
I'm glad you
scared
changed
when
your
I hear
routine for sure.
we ain't got shit. Maybe it's time to bring in the fresh eyes.
Yep. Well, I'd be there if they called me.
In a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the blood in the front hall entrance inside the home, because that's another sourced information I got this week. I think it was 2 podcasts ago or yesterday's podcast. It's Blur's Day. I'm losing track of days. But my source told me that originally there's blood inside the home. Day 3, I learned that.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, I learned that the blood pattern outside the home on the front porch and down the front walk is mirrored inside the home. Same blood pattern exists inside the home, but I didn't know where. And then yesterday, or 2 days ago, I learned that inside blood pattern is actually just inside the front door. So you go over the hearth, over the threshold of the front door into that front hallway entrance of Nancy's home, and that's where the blood droplets are, but nowhere else. What does that tell you?
So, it's without having Nancy and her wounds, we always, when you do blood pattern interpretation, you always want to know what, the wounds are, what was severed. Do you have arteries severed? Do you have, veins severed, etc. However, with what I saw on the front porch is a dripped pattern. Now there's some other smaller spatter, which might be blood dripping into blood. But at least the media photographs don't give me enough information. But having blood drips inside the front door right there, in that front entry. That only tells me that I have a bleeding source from Nancy that is dripping blood at that point in time. Now, is that, does that occur inside and then she's brought outside, or she gets herself outside, or vice versa? You can't make that conclusion. However, part of the issue that we deal with is that, okay, when did the bleeding injury occur? And I've worked many stabbing cases, and people are stabbed in the chest and there's no blood at the crime scene. They bleed internally, and any blood that they're externally bleeding from the stab wounds gets absorbed by the shirt or whatever type of clothing that they have on.
Yeah, it's true. NYC.
If we were to make the assumption that the dripped blood inside the house by the front door was the earliest blood drops, all that tells me is that that's the moment in time in which the bleeding source was able to provide enough blood to be able to be deposited. And it may have been immediately. She could have been hit on the head, pistol whipped. Now she has a laceration to her skull. Now she's dripping blood from her scalp inside that front door, and then she goes outside. She could have been stabbed in the chest in the bedroom, and now she's been carried out, and now the blood has saturated the garment that she has on, and now it's dripping. We can't conclude anything based on that outside, as we don't have motion. We don't have, let's say, a cut finger and Nancy's flailing, and now we have like cast off type patterns, or we have spatter because we now have a blow to a pooled blood source.
It's super frustrating. And also, I keep using the word vexing, because every time I think I find something out that might be informative in the investigation, it just has a million more questions that attach to it. Like when I discovered that there was blood just inside the door and nowhere else, I thought, aha, now we're getting somewhere. But maybe not.
No, and this is where, part of my frustration, because I was on the other side and I had access to everything when I worked my cases, and so now being more on this side where I am now having to, learn from you and learning from the headlines, what are they finding? It's so hard to have a complete picture. And that's where I always caution people is that, law enforcement generally has a lot more knowledge about the case than what they're letting on. The hope is that there's, some direction that they're able to take that's going to solve the case.
You mean paddling underneath the water really, really fast where you can't see it above the water? That's what I thought, Paul Holes. That's what I thought at this point. I had hoped, I had so much optimism that was what was happening under the surface. And then I heard, quote, "We ain't got shit."
Well, they do, and that's where, think about the cases I worked. I worked cases 30, 40 years old. I didn't have video surveillance cam of the guy, standing in front on the front porch. I didn't have digital markers on when, for timelines. I didn't have the guy communicating. This is where you have to get back down to the core. The core of the case is assessing victimology. It's assessing the forensic evidence. It's going to be assessing the behavioral actions of the offender and going, are we on the right path? And, today, the forensic aspect, that's one of the first things I'd focus in on. If I were being pulled in this case, I'd be going, what have you done? Have you processed her bed sheets, her comforter, her pillowcases for everything possible? That's likely, if I understand Nancy's victimology, her hearing aids were taken out. She's likely asleep. That's where the offender is first interacting with her. You may not see blood there. What else do you have? Have you even collected hair evidence? In this day and age, even with shed hair, we have the possibility of identifying who shed that hair. Have you gone after that? Where else in the house do you see disturbances where you think the offender may have interacted? You have to do that. And so, like if I were advising the sheriff and whoever from the FBI is involved, it's like, okay, let's kind of do what I would call like an audit of the investigation. What has been done? What investigative tracks have we gone down? What forensic tracks have we gone down? What voids do we have? And then if those voids are significant, we need to go down those now, because maybe our initial assumptions of what happened in this case were wrong.
I'm literally writing down, is it time for an audit of this investigation with people like Paul Holes who have done this kind of thing before?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your time and your expertise. I call you all the time, and I'm not going to stop.
I appreciate you, Ashley. Thank
I'm
you
gonna
very
actually
much for
try to
staying
call
on top
too,
of this case.
if he wants to be on. All right, well, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Friday. We'll probably be on later. Everyone stay safe out there. Hope you have a beautiful Friday. It's Friday. Enjoy. Go have dinner with the family. Go have a drink. Have fun. Be safe out there. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be on again. Thanks for all your input. Chanson, if you can give me that list of places that I'm going to go in Tucson. Thanks for all the new members. Thanks for the super chats and everything. You didn't have to do that. And I'm signing off. What's up, DD? Yep. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care of yourself. Yep. Great meeting you, Lipstick. Awesome to hear some of your stories about, you going up to Nancy and bringing the flowers, and then the not being, being in the gated community. You're safe. It just was a lot of cool stuff. Everyone have a blessed day. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.